61. The surgery of Hyuga Hizashi, Room 77, Konoha Hospital. A tense and critical surgery was underway. The patient on the operating table was Hyuga Hizashi, the younger brother of Hyuga Hayashi, the clan head. In the future, Hizashi would have a son named Hyuga Niji. During a mission in the Land of Wind, Hizashi encountered puppet masters from Sunagakure and was poisoned. "Hankawa, get ready," Tsunade ordered without looking up, extending her hand. Her palm was enveloped in a soft green chakra that suddenly turned sharp, resembling a scalpel. This was the chakra scalpel, an advanced A-rank medical ninjutsu. With practiced precision, Tsunade made an incision on Hizashi's thigh. Blood stoppage technique. Hankawa placed his hands over the wound, and green chakra flowed from his palms, halting the bleeding. "This is Chiyo's poison," Tsunade remarked while carefully examining the damaged tissue. Chiyo, the most skilled puppet master in Sunagakure, was notorious for her mastery in two fields, creating and controlling puppets and crafting deadly poisons. During the Second Shinobi World War, Tsunade and Chiyo had a fierce battle of poisons and antidotes, where Tsunade ultimately emerged victorious. Of course, whenever Hankawa thought of Chiyo, he couldn't help but also picture her in swimwear, a rather inappropriate but amusing image. "Hankawa, use the fine extraction technique," Tsunade instructed. "No, bring me the antidote I prepared." Hankawa quickly formed the necessary hand seals. The fine extraction technique was a B-rank medical ninjutsu. It was used to identify and remove toxins, pathogens, or any other harmful substances from a patient's body. Among medical techniques, it was notoriously difficult. Hankawa had spent 6 months mastering it. "Lady Tsunade," Nono Yakushi said, handing over a vial of medicine. "Good." Tsunade opened the vial as Hankawa pinpointed the location of the toxin within Hizashi's body by analyzing the disrupted chakra flow. "Found it," Hankawa announced. Tsunade sprinkled medicinal powder onto the affected area and worked in tandem with Hankawa's fine extraction technique. Moments later, Hizashi's tissue returned to its normal color, no longer blackened by poison. "Hankawa, step back," Tsunade instructed, returning the vial to Nono. She then activated the mystical palm technique, her hands glowing with healing chakra. Hankawa dispersed his own chakra and stepped aside. Watching Hizashi's wound gradually heal under the mystical palm technique, he couldn't help but marvel at its effectiveness. Unfortunately, he had yet to master this high-level technique himself. Half a year had passed since Tsunade's birthday. Hankawa had successfully unlocked the C-rank talent, Medical Chunin. C-rank talent, Medical Chunin, trigger condition, acquire 9 medical ninjutsu techniques. Effect, enhances the effectiveness of all medical ninjutsu by 50%. Notes, mastering 9 medical ninjutsu to the proficient level allows advancement to the B-rank talent, special jonin in medical ninjutsu. The 50% increase in effectiveness was remarkably powerful, allowing significant chakra conservation. The potency of a jutsu depended on the chakra's quantity, nature, and mastery of the technique. For example, Uchiha Madara could turn ordinary fire release techniques into forces comparable to forbidden jutsu. With this talent, Hankawa's output at 100% chakra was equivalent to others' output at 150%. However, advancing to the B-rank talent posed a challenge due to the proficiency requirements. Thanks to his system's unique mechanics, successfully performing a jutsu automatically raised its proficiency to the skilled level. Proficiency levels were divided into 3 stages: beginner, skilled, and mastery. Actually, having a skilled level of proficiency in medical ninjutsu was sufficient, but the requirement for achieving mastery in his techniques made the process more time-consuming. Still, there was no other option, so Hankuwa had to comply. During the vacation after his second year at the Ninja Academy, Hankuwa began an internship at Konoha Hospital. In addition to the C-rank talent, Medical Chunin, he also unlocked another C-rank talent, Genjutsu Chunin, which had similar effects and notes. This talent increased the power of his genjutsu by 50%, and mastering 9 genjutsu techniques would allow it to upgrade to the special Jonin level. Alright. Tsunade withdrew her hands. Maintaining the mystical palm technique for 5 minutes had left sweat on her forehead. Hankuwa quickly handed her a towel. You did well earlier, Tsunade remarked while wiping her sweat. More than just well, Nono Yakushi interjected. Hankuwa's medical ninjutsu is already on par with a special Jonin. To her, Hankuwa's skills were exceptionally refined. The most astonishing part? He was only 8 years old. He's still far from perfect, Tsunade said, shaking her head. Although Nono Yakushi wasn't wrong, Tsunade always held Hankuwa to the standard of a Hokage. Yes, I'll keep working hard, Hankuwa nodded firmly. It's worth noting that the system's ranking for ninjas was stricter than the shinobi world's conventional standards. For example, mastering 9 medical ninjutsu techniques could easily earn one the title of Jonin in the shinobi world. However, the system only considered this enough for special Jonin status. Nono Yakushi glanced around, noticing that both Tsunade and Hankuwa seemed to take this as normal. She couldn't help but question herself, am I under genjutsu? Or has Konoha completely revised its ninja standards? Let's go. Tsunade put down the towel and left the operating room. Lady Tsunade, Hyuga Hayashi, who had been waiting outside, quickly approached her. How is Hizashi doing? The poison has been neutralized. He just needs a few days of rest, Tsunade nodded. Thank you, Lady Tsunade, Hayashi sighed in relief. It's nothing, Tsunade waved it off casually. Is this Lady Tsunade's student? Hayashi turned his gaze to Hankuwa and complimented, so young and already interning. Truly impressive. Lord Hayashi, Nono Yakushi corrected, he's not an intern. He's Lady Tsunade's assistant. Hayashi was visibly stunned. A surgical operation typically required a lead surgeon and an assistant. Being an assistant wasn't something just any medical ninja could do, it was a position typically reserved for Chunin-level medics at minimum. In other words, Hankuwa was already a medical Chunin. At just 8 years old. Alright, stop praising him, or he'll get arrogant, Tsunade said with a faint smirk. We'll be on our way. Hankuwa quickly followed her. When does your school term start? Tsunade suddenly asked. Tomorrow, Hankuwa paused, then asked, are you going to pick me up halfway through the day? Pick you up? Tsunade raised an eyebrow, puzzled. The Hokage's speech is bound to drag on. I don't want to sit through it, Hankuwa said, coughing lightly. I thought your dream was to become Hokage. Tsunade chuckled. Shouldn't you learn from this? Nope, not interested, Hankuwa shook his head quickly. When I become Hokage someday, my speeches will never exceed 3 minutes. Becoming Hokage is a whole other question, Tsunade said, flicking his forehead. Stay humble. I've always been humble, Hankawa replied seriously. 62. Uchiha Shursui morning. Hankawa stood outside with his eyes closed. After a moment, his body trembled slightly, and lightning danced across him. He kept it up until he could no longer sustain it, then released his chakra. Hankawa exhaled deeply. After so much training, his C-rank skill entry, lightning release, chakra activation, had reached 70% progress. However, his A-rank skill entry, monstrous strength, lagged behind at only about 20%. At that moment, footsteps approached. Hankawa turned his head and was momentarily startled. It was Kakashi Hatake. But Kakashi's usual cool expression was replaced by one of worry, which was quite unusual. Moreover, he was alone. Obito Uchiha and Rin Noara were nowhere to be seen. What happened? Hankawa's mind stirred. Has Tsukumo Hatake already committed suicide? But if that were the case, Kakashi wouldn't look so calm. Have you heard the recent rumors? After a brief hesitation, Kakashi asked. What rumors? Hankawa paused before replying, I've been interning at the Konoha hospital lately, so I haven't been paying attention. They're about my father. Kakashi explained, many ninjas believe my father broke the village rules by prioritizing saving his comrades over completing the mission. Hankawa thought to himself, so the rumors have begun. This is only the start. At present, Tsukumo Hatake's strength is overwhelming. He can perfectly balance saving comrades and completing missions. However, as the saying goes, even the most careful walk by the river will eventually wet their shoes. What if Konoha assigns him an extremely difficult and critical mission, and he fails it because he chose to save his comrades first? Then, just like in the original story, he would face widespread condemnation, ultimately leading to his suicide. There's no doubt that someone is pulling the strings behind the scenes. S-rank missions are highly confidential under normal circumstances. How could the details spread so quickly throughout the village? Even if there was a leak, the Konoha leadership should have stepped in to suppress the rumors, but they hadn't. Hankawa. Kakashi's face showed confusion as he asked, do you think my father was wrong? Mission priority or comrade priority, it's hard to say who's right or wrong, given the unique nature of a ninja's work. But Hankawa thought of Naruto and his peers, who valued comrades greatly. Perhaps it was Tsukumo Hatake's suicide that pushed Konoha's leadership to change their perspective. I don't think he was wrong, Yuchuan replied earnestly. Really? Kakashi's eyes widened, asking instinctively. He had come to Hankawa because of his maturity, far beyond his peers. Over the past year of training together, their relationship had grown closer. Hankawa brought up Tsunade and said, my teacher once told me that as a medical ninja, you must never abandon a comrade. Thank you, Hankawa, Kakashi said, breathing a sigh of relief. He felt a sense of calm settle over him. I've heard a phrase that fits your father's situation perfectly. Hankawa recited, word by word, my heart and actions are clear, for all I do is righteousness. Tsukumo Hatake reminded him of two comrades in justice, Kiritsugu Amiya and Shiro Amiya. But Hankawa knew that merely persuading through Kakashi might not be enough. The key to this matter lies with the Konoha leadership, particularly Hiruzen Sarutobi. Hankawa was deep in thought. Through training with Kakashi Hatake and often interacting with Tsukumo Hatake, Hankawa had come to see Tsukumo as kind and approachable. It would be a great pity if someone like him were to die. I midline horizontal ellipsis don't really understand. Kakashi froze for a moment, a trace of awkwardness appearing on his face. Let's head to school. I'll explain it to you on the way. Hankawa called for Kurenai Yuhi, and the three of them headed to the Ninja Academy. Uchiha Clan Grounds, Shisui, congratulations on entering the academy. Here's a gift for you. Uchiha Tetsuka handed Shisui a set of custom-made kunai. Thank you, Tetsuka and I. Shisui Uchiha gave a gentle smile. It's nothing. Tetsuka patted Shisui's shoulder and said earnestly, you must reclaim the number 1 that the Uchiha lost. Huh? Shisui looked puzzled. What number 1? The top spot at the Ninja Academy, Tetsuka said seriously. Tetsuka and I is referring to Hankawa, right? Shisui's eyes flashed with curiosity. I've heard of him. His name has been spreading lately. Hankawa, despite his young age, was Tsunade's student and had already demonstrated exceptional medical ninjutsu skills. After just 2 months interning at Konoha Hospital, he had gained a fair bit of fame among the ninjas. Many were calling him the next Tsunade. That's right, Tetsuka sighed. When I entered the academy, I challenged him immediately, but I couldn't even defeat his underling, Kakashi. Isn't it possible that Kakashi is the stronger one, not Hankawa? Shisui thought for a moment and asked. Impossible. Tetsuka said firmly, a proud genius like Kakashi would only submit to someone who thoroughly defeated him. That's true. Shisui nodded in agreement. Shisui, you're the one I admire most in our generation. Even though you're younger than me, you're much stronger. Tetsuka looked at him and said, you can definitely defeat Hankawa. I midline horizontal ellipsis I'll try. Shisui didn't want to refuse, so he nodded. Besides, he was indeed curious about Hankawa. Then let's go challenge him today. Tetsuka's excitement was palpable. The glory of being number 1 belongs to the Uchiha. No need to rush. Shisui replied calmly, in ninja combat, intelligence is key. I need to understand Hankawa's abilities first. Everything about you is great, except that your personality doesn't quite feel like a true Uchiha. Tetsuka's expression froze, and he couldn't help but complain. Shisui smiled sheepishly. How about this? Tetsuka's face turned resolute. I'll challenge Hankawa and force him to go all out. Tetsuka and I midline horizontal ellipsis. Shisui froze but was immediately interrupted. No need to persuade me further. Tetsuka said with unwavering determination, for the Uchiha. Shisui hesitated but ultimately said nothing. He knew well that the Uchiha clan's ninjas always prioritized the family above all, with the village being secondary. It's just that my previous challenges have all been blocked by Kakashi, Tetsuka suddenly recalled. Shisui, you're always clever. Do you have a way to ensure Hankawa doesn't avoid the fight? Send a formal challenge letter. Shisui thought for a moment and replied, a formal challenge would likely prevent Hankawa from sending Kakashi in his place. Great idea. Tetsuka couldn't help but smile. 63. Something is amiss, Rin, don't laugh, this time it's true. As Hankawa stepped into the classroom, he heard Obito Uchiha's voice. What's true? Kakashi Hatake walked up casually, asking as if uninterested. Thanks to Hankawa's explanations on the way, Kakashi had mostly resolved his inner turmoil about Tsukumo Hatake. Good morning, Hankawa, Kakashi, and Kurenai. Rin Noara greeted them with a smile. Obito froze momentarily. Why did she greet Hankawa first? He quickly shook his head. I must be overthinking. She's just saying hello, nothing more. Just now, Obito said there's a new Uchiha freshman this year who's stronger than Kakashi, Rin said, her lips curving slightly upward. He really is stronger than Kakashi. Obito emphasized proudly. Oh, really? Kakashi was utterly unconvinced. You said the same thing about Uchiha Tetsuka last year. Tetsuka? He doesn't even last a minute against this one. Obito boasted, our clan leader himself said he's a once-in-a-decade Uchiha genius, just like me. Midline horizontal ellipsis, Kakashi thought to himself, if you hadn't added that last part, I might have believed you. But now? Not a chance. What's his name? Rin asked curiously. Uchiha Shisui. Obito snorted confidently, you'll hear his name very soon. So it's Shisui Uchiha? Hankawa's heart stirred slightly. This time, Obito might not be exaggerating. Shisui Uchiha, the prodigy who awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan even earlier than Itachi Uchiha, with the powerful eye technique Koto Ematsukami. During the Third Shinobi World War, he earned the title Shisui of the Body Flicker, becoming a legendary figure. Even Mist Village's elite Jonin, AO, chose to retreat rather than face him in battle. The most astonishing thing was his age. According to the timeline, Shisui was still under 10 when he participated in the Third Shinobi World War. Like Tsukumo Hatake, Shisui also met a tragic end through suicide, driven to despair by the impossibility of uniting the Uchiha clan and Konoha peacefully. Adding to his downfall were his desperate actions, using Koto Ematsukami on Konoha's leadership, only to be ambushed and have his eyes stolen by Danzo Shimura. It was no wonder, Koto Ematsukami was an absurdly powerful jutsu, often called the ultimate genjutsu. It could invade someone's mind without their awareness, altering their will and effectively controlling them. Such a devastating weapon would never sit well with someone like Danzo. I'm telling you all, oh, Shisui. Obito suddenly froze, feeling awkward. Did he hear what I just said? Obito and I. Shisui, who had been looking around at the doorway, brightened up. Finally, a familiar face. Obito and I, Shisui quickly walked over and asked, do you know who Hankawa is? Midline horizontal ellipsis, Obito opened his mouth, feeling a bit irritated. Hankawa again? You've got to be kidding me. That's Hankawa, Kurenai said, pointing at him. Freshman, what do you need from him? Thank you, senpai, Shisui said politely. Kurenai immediately beamed. It was the first time someone had called her senpai. Hankawa senpai, Shisui Uchiha handed over a formal challenge letter and said, this is a challenge letter from Tetsuka and I for you. Why are you delivering it? Hankawa opened the letter, scanned it, and asked. Because I wanted to meet you, Hankawa senpai, Shisui replied honestly. Hankawa blinked. Am I that famous now? What's so special about him? Obito muttered under his breath, clearly annoyed. He couldn't stand how Hankawa always seemed to shine in front of Rin. I'll be there on time, Hankawa said, putting the letter away. Thank you, Hankawa senpai, Shisui said, relieved. I won't bother you any longer. See you tomorrow. With that, Shisui turned and left. Is he really an Uchiha? Kurenai asked curiously. The Uchiha clan was notorious in Konoha for being arrogant, proud, and hard to approach. Yet Shisui's polite demeanor didn't fit that stereotype at all. He doesn't seem like one, Hankuwa replied casually. Why does Tetsuka have to make it so formal? Writing a challenge letter and everything? Kurenai asked, puzzled. He's probably afraid I'll have Kakashi step in for me again, Hankuwa mused. He couldn't even beat Kakashi. Why bother challenging you and asking for trouble? Kurenai shook her head. The two chatted for a while until it was time for the opening ceremony. Led by their homeroom teacher, Ichiro, Class 3A left the classroom in an orderly manner. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, walked onto the stage and began his speech about the will of fire. However, a slight commotion broke out in the Class 3A formation. Hiruzen noticed Tsunade among the crowd, and the corner of his mouth twitched, but he maintained his calm demeanor and continued his speech smoothly. Amid envious stares from his classmates, Hankuwa left the ceremony grounds, following Tsunade. You seem awfully happy, Tsunade remarked, glancing at him. I'm happy to see my teacher, Hankuwa replied with a smile. Smooth talker, Tsunade said, though a faint smile tugged at her lips. Where are we going next, sensei? Hankuwa paused before adding, as long as it's not to a casino. Since when do you get to tell me what to do? Tsunade's expression shifted, and she gave Hankuwa a light knock on the head. It's the first day of school, Hankuwa said, grabbing her hand. What's so special about the first day of school? Tsunade asked casually, letting him hold her hand. Nothing. Hankuwa didn't bother to come up with an excuse and simply said, but we're not going to a casino. You're impossible. Tsunade rolled her eyes before a spark of an idea lit up her gaze. Then let's go to Kushina's house. Midline horizontal ellipsis, Hankuwa hesitated to respond. He knew exactly why Tsunade wanted to go to Uzumaki Kushina's house, just to gamble in a different place. Sensei, I have a question, Hankuwa suddenly said, recalling the rumors about Tsukumo Hatake. What is it? Tsunade led him out of the school and turned left. Well, midline horizontal ellipsis, Hankuwa recounted what Kakashi had shared earlier that morning and asked, what's your take on it, sensei? There's definitely more to this, Tsunade replied, frowning instinctively. Her first thought was that Danzo Shimura was stirring up trouble. Tsukumo Hatake's reputation was so high that many believed he could become the fourth Hokage. Naturally, Danzo wouldn't be pleased with that, or with anyone else being Hokage, for that matter, unless it was himself. I'll ask the old man about it when I get the chance, Tsunade said after some thought. Okay, Hankuwa nodded. He knew he wasn't in a position to do much about it, but Tsunade intervening was the best possible outcome. At the very least, things wouldn't turn out worse than they did in the original timeline. 64. You stupid fox in the dark, sealed space, Uzumaki Kushina used her chakra to write words midair. Not far away, inside a large cage, two enormous eyes stared unblinkingly. At first, the Ninetales didn't want to look. You can't just tell me to look, and I do it. What about my dignity as the strongest-tailed beast? But loneliness eventually got the better of it. After months of Kushina's persistence, the Ninetales finally gave in and was hooked. There was no turning back. Fine, it's actually pretty good. After a year of coexisting, the Ninetales begrudgingly acknowledged Kushina. She may not have accomplished much, but her perseverance earned some respect. At that moment, a knocking sound broke the silence. Kushina's eyes lit up. Big Fox, we'll stop here for today. I need to get the door. With that, her consciousness exited the sealed space. Hey! Wait a minute. The Ninetales growled in frustration. Damn it! I hate nothing more than being left hanging. Lady Tsunade. Hankawa. Kushina opened the door and was delighted to see them. Come in. Minato's not home again. Tsunade glanced around but didn't spot Minato Namikaze. He's on a mission, Kushina explained. Ever since he learned the Flying Thunder God technique, his workload has doubled. Flying Thunder God is certainly convenient, Tsunade nodded slightly, then asked, how's the Ninetales been lately? Oh, we're getting along great. Kushina beamed. The Ninetales isn't as scary as I thought, it's just like a dog. Tsunade's expression turned strange. Comparing a tailed beast to a dog? Kushina might be the first person to do so. Even her grandpa Hashirama had described the Ninetales as too dangerous to leave unsealed. Suddenly, an overwhelming aura erupted in the room. Kushina was now clad in a blood-red cloak of tailed beast chakra, with two tails lashing wildly. What's going on? Tsunade immediately tensed, clenching her fists as she asked in a grave tone. It's fine, it's fine. Kushina waved her hand dismissively. I called it a dog, and it got upset. It's just protesting. Midline horizontal ellipsis. Tsunade was speechless. This was far from the so-called embodiment of evil everyone feared. Today's the first day of school. Hankawa, how do you have time to come here? Kushina retracted her tails and asked. By now, she could easily control her tails and even partially enter a tailed beast transformation. He found the Hokage's speech too long-winded and didn't want to listen, Tsunade explained with a smile. I thought the same thing. Kushina exclaimed, finding a kindred spirit. Hankawa remembered something. Kushina wasn't exactly the obedient type. She was just as headstrong as Tsunade and prone to violence, though she hid it well in front of them. It's still too early for dinner. How about a card game? After some small talk, Tsunade finally revealed her true intentions. Hankawa shook his head helplessly. Of course, it's always about gambling. Huh? Kushina suddenly looked surprised. The Ninetales says it wants to join the card game too. Sure. Tsunade was stunned for a moment, then became intrigued. Playing cards with the Ninetales. That sounded like fun. But the Ninetales is in the sealed space. How's it going to play cards? Tsunade raised a valid question. The next second, two tails emerged again. Under the Ninetales' control, they transformed into 10 finger-like appendages. Let's do this. Tsunade flexed her wrists. I've never beaten a tailed beast before. And so, 3 people and 1 fox sat down at the table to play. What kind of card game? Kushina Uzumaki held a deck of cards and said, it should be something simple so the Ninetales can quickly understand the rules. I am incredibly smart. I can understand any rules. The Ninetales roared, and the 2 tails it extended outside the seal swayed indignantly. I have a new game idea, Hankoa raised his hand and said, "It's called Demon Card Battle." He initially wanted to suggest Landlord's Game, a Chinese card game, but realizing it would be hard to explain, he improvised. "Then explain the rules," Kushina said, shuffling the cards. "It works like this." Hankoa explained the rules, which were essentially those of Landlord's Game with slight alterations. "Doesn't that require one more person?" Kushina asked after listening. "I won't play," Hankoa replied, shaking his head. "Fair enough," Kushina agreed. "Kids really shouldn't gamble." "Sit next to me," Tsunade said suddenly. At Kushina's house, whenever cards were involved, Tsunade rarely won if Hankoa participated. But now that he wasn't playing, she saw an opportunity to use him as her helper. Hankoa immediately understood her intentions and sat beside her. "Move closer," Tsunade ordered with a glance. Hankoa shifted his seat until their bodies were touching. Even through their clothes, he could feel her soft skin and, notably, her plump thighs. "You two really have a great teacher-student relationship," Kushina remarked, watching the scene unfold with a smile. The demon card battle began. "Big Fox. Stop playing recklessly. We're on the same team. You're terrible at this game. Shut up, you stupid fox." Kushina's furious shouts echoed continuously. Meanwhile, Tsunade, benefiting from Hankoa's presence, seemed to neutralize her usual bad luck. But with the Ninetales as Kushina's unreliable partner, she ended up losing more often than winning. "Calm down." Hankoa poured Kushina a cup of coffee to ease her frustration. "What Ninetales? It's nothing special," Kushina declared after a sip. The two tails beside her twitched slightly, but Kushina shot them a fierce glare, causing them to droop dejectedly. They looked utterly defeated. Hankoa tried to stifle a laugh but didn't dare let it slip. In the original storyline, once Naruto and the Ninetales became friends, its true personality was revealed, a bit tsundere, with a touch of husky-like behavior. E-rank talent effect, benevolent tongue has upgraded. Hand seal speed increased by an additional 30%. Hankoa let out a small sound of surprise. Was this upgrade due to the Ninetales? Regardless, it was a good thing. Hand seal speed was crucial for a ninja. After lunch, Hankoa and Tsunade left Kushina's house. "Afternoon training?" Hankoa asked on their way home. "I want to learn the body flicker technique." The body flicker technique wasn't particularly difficult. Hankoa had postponed learning it to wait for his C-rank talent, Medic Chunin, to complete. With this technique, he could now merge it into the C-rank talent Swift as Wind, and eventually into the B-rank talent Seal Less Healing. "Fine," Tsunade agreed, though a bit reluctantly. She had initially planned to visit a casino but set it aside to teach him. Once they returned home, they stayed outside rather than going inside. Tsunade began explaining the technique. The body flicker technique, in essence, is a rapid movement skill. It comes in various forms. The basic body flicker is a D-rank technique and relatively simple. Advanced versions incorporate chakra nature transformations, such as water flicker, mist flicker, or lightning flicker. The highest level involves space-time ninjutsu, like the Flying Thunder God technique. For now, Hankoa was learning the simplest, standard version of the body flicker technique. 65. Yamato style would release Night had fallen. After saying goodbye to Tsunade, Hankoa returned home. Following an afternoon of training, he had successfully grasped the basics of the body flicker technique. D-rank ninjutsu trait, body flicker technique. Trigger condition, successfully perform this technique. Effect, the technique is automatically raised to proficiency level. The standard body flicker felt to Hankoa like the sprint ability in a video game from his past life. By channeling chakra into his legs, he could dramatically boost his speed for rapid movement. Taking a deep breath, Hankoa opened his trait system. It was time to start combining traits. The first combination was for the C-rank trait, Swift as Wind. C-rank talent trait, Swift as Wind. Trigger condition, combined from D-rank traits, body flicker technique, swordsmanship trainee, and wind release trainee. Effect, leg speed increases by 100% and ninja tool attack speed increases by 50%. It lived up to being a C-rank trait. The only drawback was that all improvements were based on existing capabilities, so it wasn't as overpowering as he'd hoped. Even so, it was already impressive. Hankoa drew his katana, twisted his wrist, and slashed downward. The sound of the blade slicing through the air was sharp and clean as the katana embedded itself in the ground. It's definitely much faster. Hankoa sheathed his sword, channeled chakra into his legs, and dashed forward like the wind. After a few seconds, he stopped. Improved leg strength is far more practical, he muttered, nodding in satisfaction. Now his normal running speed was akin to using half a body flicker. In the Academy's physical training sessions, even Might Guy probably wouldn't be able to outrun him. More importantly, the faster he could run, the better his chances of survival in dangerous situations. Suddenly, an idea struck him. What if he used body flicker while already running at full speed? Excited, Hankoa started running again, forming hand seals mid-stride. Body flicker technique. His body blurred into a streaking afterimage. So fast! Hankoa exclaimed, exhilarated. The wind rushing against his face felt like blades slicing through his skin, and his hair and clothes whipped violently backward. Suppressing his excitement, he opened the trait system again. It was time to combine the second trait, the one he was most looking forward to. B-rank talent trait, CLS healing. Trigger condition, combined from C-rank traits, medical ninja, robust physique, and swift as wind. Effect, increases natural healing ability by 150%. Note, can be combined with A-rank traits, Earth Release Elite, and Water Release Elite, to create the A-rank trait, Wood Release, Yamato style. Hankoa's eyes lit up. CLS healing, as described in the original lore, was the innate talent of Hashirama Senju, whose incredible vitality allowed him to heal wounds without forming hand seals. The trait granted enhanced natural healing, though Hankoa knew it wouldn't reach Hashirama's legendary levels. After all, even after Hashirama's death, his cells remained extraordinarily active. To test the ability, Hankoa took out a kunai and made a shallow cut on the back of his hand. 5 seconds later, the wound closed completely. A bit slow, he murmured, but still incredible. It was like facing a regenerating enemy in a video game, something no player ever wanted to encounter. What truly surprised Hankoa, however, was the potential for the CLS healing trait to lead to Yamato-style Wood Release. While Yamato's version of Wood Release was often joked about as being suited for landscaping, his performance in the original series wasn't weak. His overall abilities ranked him among the elite jonin. The only thing Yamato lacked was chakra reserves or the life force associated with the yang release. When Yamato was controlled by White Zetsu, his combat power skyrocketed, rivaling even Kaga-level ninjas. If he had access to Sage Mode, he might have become a half-step Hashirama. Though Yamato couldn't acquire those enhancements, Hankoa could. After all, Deep Blue's leveling has no limits. The only challenge lies in acquiring the A-rank traits, Earth Release Elite, and Water Release Elite. It makes sense, though. Yamato's style would release is derived from the fusion of earth and water chakra natures. To combine chakra natures, one must at least be at the jonin level. Who should I target to grind for earth and water release talents? Hankoa lay on his bed, deep in thought. His innate chakra natures were limited to lightning and fire. Normally, he would need to become a chunin before he could learn other elements, but that was too slow. The best option was to grind for talents. His fire release talent came from Obito Uchiha. His lightning release talent came from Kakashi Hatake. His wind release talent came from Asuma Sarutobi. Hankoa didn't know the system's criteria for selecting individuals or whether he could switch targets. Suddenly, an idea came to him, Shisui Uchiha. Because Obito Uchiha was relatively weak, his fire-spitting kid trait was still at E rank. However, Shisui Uchiha would undoubtedly meet the standards for an upgrade. If he fought Shisui, he could find out whether it was possible to switch targets. The next day marked the beginning of classes for third-year students. Hankoa yawned as he attended his first lesson. The morning class covered the basics of setting traps. Tsunade had already taught him much more advanced and detailed techniques, so what Ichiro taught in class felt overly simplistic, designed for freshly graduated genin. Hankoa scanned the room and spotted Kakashi Hatake. A thought crossed his mind. In addition to lightning release, Kakashi also had earth release. After all, his signature earth release, Earth-style wall often featured his iconic dog carvings. Kakashi usually sparred with him using the Hatake sword style. Next time, Hankoa decided to request he use earth release instead. Returning his attention to the class, Hankoa pulled out Tsunade's notebook, which detailed her insights and training methods for her superhuman strength technique. Ichiro noticed Hankoa's inattentiveness but chose to ignore it. In the past, he might have disciplined him, but now? Not worth the trouble. Last month, after sustaining an injury, Ichiro had visited the Konoha hospital for treatment, only to find that Hankoa was the attending medical ninja. As they say, in the ninja world, you can offend anyone, but never offend a medical ninja. Hokage's office bang. The door flew open with a loud crash. Who the hell midline horizontal ellipsis, Hiruzen Sarutobi started, startled. But upon seeing Tsunade, he sighed and asked, "Can't you ever knock?" Among his 3 students, Jiraiya never used the main entrance, Tsunade always kicked the door open, and Orochimaru would push it open silently. None of them had any concept of knocking. Add to that Danzo, who often barged in dramatically, and it was no wonder the office doors were always worn out. What's this nonsense about Tsukumo Hatake? Tsunade got straight to the point. What nonsense? Hiruzen asked, confused. You don't know? Tsunade frowned and recounted the rumors about Tsukumo Hatake. Hiruzen's expression darkened. He already had a good idea who was behind it and why Danzo was stirring up trouble. At this point in time, Tsukumo Hatake had yet to take on the infamous mission that would lead to catastrophic losses, as depicted in the original story. From Hiruzen's perspective, Danzo's actions seemed completely unreasonable. Ninjas risk their lives to complete missions, only to come back and face baseless rumors? Tsunade sneered, her tone cold. Old man, are you even fit to be Hokage? Don't worry. Those rumors will disappear soon, Hiruzen replied, somewhat guilty. Fortunately, they're only circulating among the ninja ranks. They'd better, Tsunade shot back, turning to leave. Tsunade, Hiruzen called out, stopping her. Who do you think should be the next Hokage? Tsunade paused and frowned at him. 66. The Uchiha under Genjutsu. I'm getting old. Deciding on the next Hokage early will ensure greater stability for the Hidden Leaf Village, Hiruzen Sarutobi said slowly, taking a drag from his pipe as he locked eyes with Tsunade. Why are you asking me? Tsunade replied, rolling her eyes. Shouldn't you be asking Danzo? He'd be more than happy to answer you. You know as well as I do, Danzo can't become Hokage, Hiruzen said firmly, without hesitation. Then why do you let him do as he pleases? Tsunade asked irritably. Where there is light, there must also be shadow. Some things require Danzo's hand, Hiruzen said calmly. As long as I keep him firmly under control, there won't be any major issues. You're confident you can keep Danzo in check, but what about the next Hokage? Tsunade said, her tone turning serious. If they fail to control him, the consequences will be disastrous. That's why the choice of the next Hokage is so important, Hiruzen admitted. At the very least, Tsukumo Hatake isn't suitable. He wouldn't be able to handle Danzo. So you already knew about the rumors surrounding Tsukumo Hatake, Tsunade said, narrowing her eyes slightly. Midline horizontal ellipsis, Hiruzen fell into an awkward silence. Claiming he had no idea wasn't an option, Root wasn't an independent organization, it operated under the ANBU, and he inevitably received related intelligence. Aside from Tsukumo, only the three of you are qualified to become Hokage, Hiruzen said, coughing lightly to change the subject. I'm not interested. Tsunade responded without hesitation. If you're not interested, then why do you care so much about Tsukumo Hatake? Hiruzen asked, shaking his head. Tsunade, you clearly care a lot about the Hidden Leaf. Caring about the village doesn't mean I care about being Hokage, Tsunade retorted bluntly. Midline horizontal ellipsis, Hiruzen was silent for a few seconds before speaking again. I know it's because of, don't mention him. Tsunade interrupted sharply. You're like this, and so is Orochimaru, Hiruzen sighed. Nawaki's death had deeply affected both of his students. Orochimaru is more suited than I am, Tsunade said offhandedly, reminded of her past by his words. In terms of strength and cunning, that's true, Hiruzen admitted, pausing slightly. Are you really not going to fight for it? Tsunade opened her mouth to respond but suddenly thought of Hankawa, and a hint of hesitation flickered in her heart. You have quite an advantage, Hiruzen continued, noticing her moment of doubt. Especially with the Land of Fire. You're more popular than anyone else there. It was Senju Hashirama who ended the Warring States period and established the one country one village system. As his granddaughter and a renowned medical ninja, Tsunade had strong ties with the Fire Daimyo and the noble families. She was also the only ninja widely referred to as a princess. Who do you want to choose? Tsunade asked, looking directly at him. I don't know, Hiruzen admitted honestly. He leaned toward either Orochimaru or Tsunade but hadn't made a final decision. As for Minato Namikaze, he was currently just an average jonin with little influence. Then take your time choosing, Tsunade said, throwing the question back at him. I just wanted to remind you, if you plan to compete, you should start preparing early, Hiruzen said, unable to hold back his complaint. Gamble less, take on more missions. Have you even done a single mission recently? He stopped short of saying something else. Even if she didn't want the position, she couldn't let Tsukumo Hatake overshadow her too much. After all, he wasn't part of the Hokage lineage. I've been busy teaching Hankawa, so I don't have the time, Tsunade said without batting an eye. Hiruzen Sarutobi twitched the corner of his mouth and asked, speaking of Hankawa, as his teacher, shouldn't you take him out for some field experience once in a while? He's still young, Tsunade refused outright. He's a genius, age doesn't matter. His current strength is already on par with a Chunin, Hiruzen said earnestly. Waiting until war breaks out for field training would be too late. War? Tsunade's eyes narrowed as she asked, what do you mean? It's information from Minato, Hiruzen explained without hiding anything. The Hidden Cloud Village has purchased significantly more ninja tools and supplies this year than in previous years. They might be preparing for war. Before troops march, logistics come first. In war, the importance of supply lines cannot be overstated. While this didn't confirm that the Hidden Cloud intended to start a war, it was a precaution worth taking. I understand, Tsunade said gravely. She remembered how Nawaki had died due to inexperience on the battlefield, falling into a paper bomb trap. She would never allow Hankawa to follow the same path. Class dismissed. Ichiro picked up his textbook and left the classroom. Hankawa packed his desk and prepared to head to the agreed meeting spot with Uchiha Tekika for their one-on-one duel. Hankawa. Rin Noara approached him, followed by Kakashi Hatake and Obito Uchiha. Can we come to watch? Rin asked expectantly. Although Uchiha Tetsuka was insignificant in Hankawa's eyes, he was well known in school as the top second-year student. I don't care, it's just on the way, Obito muttered, though it was clear he was eager to watch. However, his hope was for Tetsuka to win, not Hankawa. Sure, Hankawa said with a slight nod. We'll go to the third training ground. With Kurenai Yuhi joining them, the group of 5 left the classroom together. They're here. From a distance, Uchiha Tetsuka saw Hankawa approaching, his tone full of excitement. Tetsuka and I, don't forget the strategy we just discussed, Shisui Uchiha reminded him. Be cautious of his genjutsu. I got it, Tetsuka said, patting Shisui's shoulder. Beating me won't be that easy. Alright, Shisui replied, saying no more. He was familiar with Tetsuka's strength from their frequent sparring. While Tetsuka couldn't match Hankawa, he shouldn't lose too badly either. Let's begin, Tetsuka said, stepping into the training area. Good luck, Hankawa. Kurenai clenched her fists and cheered loudly. Rin, more reserved, simply waved encouragingly. Obito, annoyed, wanted to cheer for Tetsuka but held back in the end. Kakashi remained expressionless. He knew Tetsuka couldn't even beat him, let alone Hankawa. The only question was how long he would last. Fire style, great fireball jutsu. Tetsuka formed hand seals and spat a massive fireball from his mouth. Hankawa remained still, unsheathing his katana and slicing the fireball in two, causing it to split and disperse. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Anticipating this, Tetsuka immediately followed up with another technique. Flames spewed from his mouth, scattering like a cluster of phoenix flowers, sealing off all of Hankawa's escape routes. "I've won!" Tetsuka exclaimed excitedly. After discussing with Shisui, they had decided on a long-range strategy to keep Hankawa at bay with fire-style jutsu and secure victory. But to the onlookers, it appeared as if Tetsuka was fighting a tree. Shisui opened his mouth but said nothing. He had seen it clearly. After slicing through the fireball, Hankawa had cast demonic illusion, false surroundings technique. His hand seal speed was too fast, and the fireball momentarily obscured Tetsuka's vision, leaving him unaware he had fallen into a genjutsu. Shisui's expression grew increasingly grave. Not only had Tetsuka failed to force Hankawa to use his full strength, but he had also made him appear even more formidable. 67. Shisui defeated by the body flicker technique. The air was scorching. A massive fireball was once again launched, slamming into a nearby tree. "I hit it! I hit it!" Uchiha Tetsuka exclaimed excitedly. Midline horizontal ellipsis. Uchiha Shisui remained silent. He was still fighting against an invisible opponent. Shisui walked forward, glanced at Hankawa, and exchanged eye contact for a few seconds before stopping in front of Tetsuka. Extending his hand, Shisui infused chakra into him, dispelling the genjutsu. The Hankawa before him transformed into a tree. The joyful expression on Tetsuka's face froze instantly. He blurted out in disbelief, "What just happened?" "Tetsuka and you were caught in a genjutsu," Shisui said seriously. "Impossible." Tetsuka denied it outright. But after glancing at the scorched tree and then at Hankawa standing not far away, he appeared deflated moments later. I'm an Uchiha, yet I lost to a genjutsu," Tetsuka murmured, utterly dejected. "Tetsuka and it's not your fault," Shisui said, shaking his head to comfort him. Midline horizontal ellipsis. Tetsuka didn't know what to say. "Want to keep going?" At that moment, Hankawa's voice rang out. Tetsuka instinctively looked up, but realized Hankawa wasn't addressing him, he was speaking to Shisui. This left Tetsuka feeling irritated, though he quickly acknowledged it as fair. The weak deserved humiliation. This had always been the Uchiha clan's ideology, they recognized only strength. "Me?" Shisui seemed a little surprised. "I've heard of your name," Hankawa said with a slight smile. Shisui was momentarily flattered. After hesitating for a few seconds, he replied, "Please enlighten me." Having just witnessed Tetsuka's crushing defeat, Shisui had originally planned to wait before challenging Hankawa, hoping to increase his chances of success. But now that it had come to this, there was no reason to back down. Hankawa and Shisui moved to the center of the field and performed the seal of confrontation. "Another fight?" Kakashi Hatake raised an eyebrow. Obito Uchiha's eyes lit up with hope. "Great! Shisui's here. Uchiha still has a chance." "Hankawa will definitely win," Kurenai Yuhi said confidently. "Not necessarily," Obito retorted. "Whose side are you on?" Kurenai asked, visibly annoyed. I'm on Rin's side," Obito replied awkwardly, glancing at Rin Noara. But Rin didn't respond, her attention was on the unfolding battle. The fight had begun. Shisui flicked his right hand, sending two kunai flying silently and suddenly toward Hankoa. Impressive, Hankoa thought, admiring Shisui's technique. Among his peers, it was unmatched. Hankoa dodged the kunai and charged toward Shisui, his katana drawing a sharp arc aimed at Shisui's neck. The effect of the C-rank skill swift as the wind was on full display. So fast. Shisui's heart tensed as he quickly drew the blade from his back, blocking the katana just in time. But a tremendous force struck him, pushing his body backward uncontrollably. This is bad. Shisui realized the danger. Hankoa lifted his leg and kicked him. Shisui lost his balance and rolled on the ground twice. Despite the pain, he immediately got back on his feet. Fire style, great fireball jutsu. Shisui created some distance and formed hand seals. The same great fireball jutsu, but Shisui's fireball was a third larger than Uchiha Tetsuka's. Hankoa casually sheathed his katana, crossed his hands, and flicked his wrists. 8 shuriken shot forth, spreading out like a blossoming flower. The massive fireball was instantly pierced, and the momentum of the shuriken didn't falter as they flew toward Uchiha Shisui. What? Shisui was stunned. Hankoa's ninja tool throwing skills were no worse than his own. Shisui quickly scanned the incoming shuriken. Seizing the opportunity, he swung his ninja blade sharply. All 8 shuriken were deflected, but the force transmitted through the blade left his right arm momentarily numb. How does he have such strength? Before he could think further, the sound of rushing air reached his ears. Instinctively turning his head, he saw the fallen shuriken suddenly springing back toward him. Threads. For a moment, Shisui thought he was sparring with another Uchiha ninja. Body flicker technique. His body accelerated instantly. After creating some distance, Shisui spun his blade, slicing through the threads and severing them completely. He followed up with rapid movements of his blade, knocking all the shuriken back. Fire style, Phoenix Fire Jutsu. Shisui resheathed his blade and formed hand seals. Flames spewed from his mouth, catching up to the returning shuriken and combining into a devastating combo attack. Too strong. Obito Uchiha couldn't help but exclaim, this is what it means to be an Uchiha. The Phoenix Fire Jutsu was a B-rank fire style technique. Neither he nor Tetsuka could perform it. Being able to master a B-rank technique meant one was qualified to participate in the Chunin exams. In other words, unless Hankoa had Chunin level strength, he wouldn't be able to block this. Body flicker technique. Hankoa became a blur, his speed so great that he evaded all 8 flaming shuriken effortlessly. How is his body flicker that fast? Obito was dumbfounded. Incredible. Kakashi instinctively clenched his fists. I can't even see him clearly, Rin Noara and Kurenai Yuhi said, straining their eyes but only managing to catch afterimages. What the hell? Shisui hastily drew his blade. But in the next moment, he felt a cold sting on his neck. The katana was already poised at his throat. One move, and he'd lose his head. I lost. Shisui released his blade and admitted defeat respectfully. Hankoa-senpai truly lives up to his reputation. You're even more formidable than I imagined. You're not bad yourself, Hankoa replied with a smile. Not at all, Shisui said, scratching his head. Your body flicker technique has opened my eyes. I'll need to study it more. Hankoa froze for a moment. In the original story, Shisui's title, Shisui of the Body Flicker, came from his mastery of the technique. Yet here, it seemed he was inspired by Hankoa instead. At that moment, 2 lines of text appeared before Hankoa's eyes. E-rank talent trait, Fire Starter, has been upgraded. Fire style talent increased by 30%. It really upgraded? Hankoa was surprised but couldn't help feeling delighted. If his abilities could improve this way, it meant his talents weren't as hard to enhance as he thought. Hankoa has grown even stronger, Kakashi remarked, having watched the entire fight. Amazing, Rin murmured, her eyes filled with admiration. She hadn't forgotten that Hankoa's main role was as a medical ninja, and a prodigy at that, one capable of training under Tsunade. Yet his ninjutsu, genjutsu, and kenjutsu were all top tier as well. It was almost unbelievable. Obito stared at Rin's profile, his expression stiffening. Damn it! How did I lose again? What a disgrace to the Uchiha name. He conveniently forgot that if he faced Hankoa himself, he'd lose even faster. 68. Crying in the teacher's arms isn't bad, Shisui. Hankoa smiled and extended an invitation. If you're free, we can train together. Uchiha Obito was able to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, so his talent wasn't bad, but his growth during his time at the Ninja Academy had been relatively slow. As for Uchiha Shisui, in a few years, his strength would skyrocket during the Third Great Ninja War, elevating him to the rank of an elite jonin. When choosing someone to hone fire release skills with, the choice was obvious. Sure, Hankoa-senpai, Shisui agreed without hesitation. Unlike other members of the Uchiha clan, Shisui didn't shy away from interacting with ninjas outside of his clan. Besides, Hankoa wasn't an ordinary person. His identity and strength made him someone worth associating with. See you tomorrow. Hankoa didn't linger. After saying his goodbyes, he turned and left. As he passed by a ramen shop under renovation, he stopped in his tracks. Hanging at the entrance was a sign that read Ichiraka Ramen. Was it about to open? Hankoa curiously glanced at the shop but didn't see the legendary Otsutsuki Ichiraku, only the workers handling the renovations. Retracting his gaze, he soon returned to Tsunade's house. Just as he was about to take out the key, he noticed that the door was slightly ajar, with a finger-width gap. Tsunade was home. He was a bit surprised. Hankoa pushed open the door and walked into the living room. Tsunade's head was resting against the armrest of the sofa, her eyes half-closed, her lips soft and pink. Her slender waist supported her full figure, the weight naturally tilting and putting pressure on her outfit. Her hips sank deeply into the sofa, and her long legs were crossed, with her right leg on top, her fair, delicate foot gently swaying in the air. Her toes were a soft pink, neatly aligned, looking adorable. The only flaw was that her red nail polish had lost its luster and wasn't as vibrant as when freshly applied. Sensei, Hankoa greeted. Tsunade responded noncommittally. Is something bothering you? Hankoa sensed something different from her usual demeanor. Not really. Tsunade sat up and said, I was just thinking about which mission to take. Huh? Hankoa was surprised. You're taking a mission. What's with that look? Tsunade couldn't help but glare at him. I've never seen you take a mission before, Hankoa blinked and replied. Would I tell you if I did? Tsunade retorted without batting an eye. Then why are you telling me today? Hankoa quickly caught the inconsistency. Because you're coming too. Tsunade chuckled and asked, scared? Why would I be? Although the news was sudden, Hankoa was somewhat eager. He had never left the village before. Previously, he had avoided leaving the academy out of caution, wary of Shimura Danzo. But with Tsunade accompanying him now, it seemed safe enough. Missions aren't a joke. Tsunade reached out and flicked his forehead. Just make sure you don't end up crying and clinging to me when you have to kill. Hankoa froze slightly. He had never killed anyone, but a ninja who didn't kill would eventually be killed. Crying in my teacher's arms doesn't sound bad. Hankoa tilted his head, eyeing her generous figure. Even crying has a time limit. Tsunade laughed, ruffling his hair. There's no time for tears on the battlefield. The battlefield? Hankoa's heart stirred. He remembered that Sarutobi Asuma and Kurenai Yuhi had graduated at the age of 9, which marked the beginning of the Third Great Ninja War. In other words, there's less than 2 years left. I won't cry, Hankoa shook his head and said firmly. After all, having lived 2 lives, his mental resilience was naturally stronger than his peers. Your current strength isn't bad, so I'll pick a slightly tougher mission, Tsunade said with a smile. I trust you. Just not too tough, Hankoa coughed lightly. I haven't graduated yet. You sly little brat. Hearing this, Tsunade ruffled his hair. She preferred this kind of personality. Those who were too upright didn't last long on the battlefield. This is called being smart, Hankoa corrected her. Sure, let's call it that, Tsunade said dismissively before adding, I've already spoken to the old man about Tsukumo Hataki's situation. It'll be resolved soon. As expected of my teacher. Hankoa immediately praised her. Fake, Tsunade withdrew her hand and said, now go make dinner. Yes, ma'am. Hankoa stood up straight and replied, mission guaranteed to be completed. Tsunade watched him walk into the kitchen, the smile on her face gradually fading. She scratched her head, still troubled over which mission to take. If it was too difficult, she worried Hankoa might get hurt. But if it was too easy, it wouldn't provide enough experience. This was the first time she'd felt so conflicted over a mission. Teacher, dinner's ready. A moment later, Hankoa came out of the kitchen carrying bowls and chopsticks. Anything happen at school today? Tsunade asked casually as she sat at the table and picked up her chopsticks. Nothing major, Hankoa said, grabbing a piece of tempura shrimp. I sparred with Shursui. Uchiha Shursui. Tsunade recalled. I've heard Uchiha clan members at the Konoha hospital mention him, an exceptionally rare talent. He is pretty impressive, Hankoa nodded slightly. He even knows Fire Release, Phoenix Sage Flower Nail Crimson. Tsunade was momentarily surprised. Being able to use Fire Release, Phoenix Sage Flower Nail Crimson wasn't extraordinary, but given his age, it was astonishing. Who won? Tsunade looked at him and asked. Of course, I did, Hankoa said proudly, lifting his chin slightly. I wouldn't embarrass my teacher. Aren't you impressive? Tsunade chuckled, then asked, So, does that mean your genjutsu and swordsmanship are at the level of a chunin? More or less, Hankawa said as he chewed on the shrimp. Is that so? Tsunade mused. Finish your meal, and I'll take you to meet someone. Who? Hankawa asked curiously. There are quite a few in the village skilled in the Konoha-style swordsmanship, and he happens to be one of them, Tsunade explained. He's also integrated genjutsu into his swordsmanship, which suits you well. Mariboshi Kosuka. The name immediately popped into Hankawa's mind. He was a legendary genin. In his youth, his impatience had caused the deaths of his teammates. As penance, he swore to the second Hokage, Tobarama Senju, that he would remain a genin for life. Even the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, had tried to promote him to jonin, but Kosuka refused. His true strength, however, was formidable even among jonin. Granduncle had a connection with him and even taught him water-release ninjutsu, Tsunade explained. Out of respect for Granduncle, he won't refuse to teach you. If not for Hankawa, she wouldn't have wanted to owe anyone a favor. But an extra bit of strength meant an extra chance of survival. Thank you, teacher, Hankawa said with a nod. A teacher's care was just as precious as a parent's love. 69. Water release and Kurenai Yuhi. After finishing their meal, Hankawa followed Tsunade out. Half an hour later, he met Mariboshi Kosuka. Kosuka wore a gray vest and carried a large black pot along with several spatulas, making him look more like a chef than a ninja. Unlike in the original timeline, his left leg was still intact. Seeing the large black pot, Hankawa couldn't help but think of Pot Shadow Danzo Shimura. Lady Tsunade. Kosuka was stunned, his face showing a look of surprise. Kosuka, it's been a while. Tsunade ruffled Hankawa's hair and said, This is my student, Hankawa. Uncle Kosuka. Hankawa greeted him politely. I've heard of you, Kosuka said with a nod and a smile. Lady Tsunade has found herself a fine student. I came today to ask you to teach him Konoha-style swordsmanship, Tsunade said after some brief pleasantries. No problem. Kosuka agreed without hesitation. Thank you. Tsunade sighed in relief at how smoothly things were going. Lady Tsunade, don't mention it, Kosuka said with a wave of his hand. Back then, even the second Hokage was generous with his teachings. How could I refuse? He was referring to the water release, water dragon bullet technique. Originally requiring 44 hand signs, Kosuka had learned to use it with only 3 or 6 hand signs thanks to Tobarama Senju. Lady Tsunade, does Hankawa have any swordsmanship experience? Kosuka asked, getting straight to the point. He does, Tsunade replied. Let's spar first, Kosuka suggested after a moment's thought. You can learn a lot about someone through combat. Hankawa, Tsunade advised, use your full strength. She also wanted to see how skilled her student was in swordsmanship. Although she was his teacher, she had only taught him medical ninjutsu and superhuman strength. His swordsmanship and genjutsu had been taught by Kurenai Yuhi, so she wasn't entirely familiar with his progress. Understood, Hankawa said, drawing his katana. Here I come. Kosuka unsheathed a ninja sword and charged forward. Clang! The powerful clash made Kosuka's arm tremble slightly. As expected of Tsunade's student. Kosuka was impressed but didn't let it distract him. The two engaged in close-range sword combat, their blades clashing repeatedly in a flurry of strikes. Within less than a minute, they had exchanged dozens of blows. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Hankawa's swordsmanship was far better than she had expected. She realized she didn't know him as well as she thought. "That's enough," Kosuke said, stepping back to create some distance. He had only intended to gauge Hankawa's strength, not to engage in a serious match. There was no need to determine a winner. "Well, how is he?" Tsunade asked. "Lady Tsunade, you were far too modest earlier," Kosuke said with admiration. "This isn't just a basic foundation. There's very little I can still teach him in Konoha-style swordsmanship." Hearing this, Tsunade smiled faintly. Compliments toward Hankawa were, in a way, compliments toward her, though she didn't care much for such things. This kid really wasn't bad. "I've combined genjutsu with swordsmanship to create a technique called Konoha-style, Willow. I can teach it to him," Kosuke said after a moment of thought. "That would be wonderful, Kosuke," Tsunade said. This was exactly what she had hoped for. "It's no trouble at all. In fact, I should thank you, Lady Tsunade," Kosuke said with a hearty laugh. "I'd always worried that Konoha-style, Willow would be lost to time, but now I don't have to worry anymore." Although Konoha-style swordsmanship was a fundamental style, genius ninjas often looked down on it, while ordinary ninjas struggled to master it, leaving Kosuke without a student for years. "Hankawa," Tsunade said, pausing briefly, "in the coming days, make sure to come here and learn from Kosuke whenever you can. And listen to him." "Got it," Hankawa nodded. Hankawa wanted to complain, "Do you have some misunderstanding about me?" He was so obedient, and his performance at the academy could be verified. After Tsunade left, Mariboshi Kosuke began explaining his Konoha-style, Willow technique. In simple terms, it involved using swordsmanship to initiate, then activating genjutsu to blur one's form and restrain the enemy, and finally attacking from a blind spot. It was fairly challenging overall, just short of requiring superhuman strength. 3 days later, at the Ninja Academy, Hankawa opened his entry system. A-rank ninjutsu entry, Konoha-style, Willow. Trigger condition, successfully execute the technique. Current progress, 5%. Although it was A-rank, progress on superhuman strength was much slower since he didn't have talent bonuses for taijutsu. However, he had bonuses for genjutsu and swordsmanship. Hankawa estimated it would take 1 or 2 months to master Konoha-style, Willow. "Hankawa." Kurenai Yuhi's voice snapped him back to reality. He turned to look at her. Kurenai puffed out her cheeks, clearly upset. "What's wrong?" Hankawa reached out and poked her cheek. It felt like a soft balloon, sinking under his touch. "Where have you been these past few days? Why haven't you been training with us?" Kurenai pouted. "I've been learning swordsmanship from a senior," Hankawa replied, then raised an eyebrow and asked, "Kurenai, would you like to learn water release?" Kurenai had previously been tested and found to have water affinity. Hankawa also needed to work on his water release talent. More importantly, Kosuke might be, apart from Hiruzen Sarutobi, the most skilled water release user in Konoha, especially since he learned it directly from Tobarama Senju. Water release? Kurenai was momentarily taken aback, then hesitated. "But I'm already slow at learning genjutsu." "Give it a try," Hankawa said with a smile. "Besides, if you only focus on genjutsu, your future potential might be limited. In the ninja world, genjutsu had a critical weakness: it could be dispelled by allies. In other words, while genjutsu users could hold their own in one-on-one battles, they became less effective in larger group scenarios, except for members of the Uchiha clan. If my dad heard you say that, he'd be furious, Kurenai said, giving him a sidelong glance. Are you going to tell him? Hankawa asked, playing with a strand of her hair. And no, I won't, Kurenai stammered, feeling her heart race. Kurenai, you're the best, Hankawa said softly. Of course. Kurenai declared proudly. I would never betray you. Not far away, Asuma Sarutobi glanced at them. Although he had given up on Kurenai, watching Hankawa take advantage of the situation still made him mutter to himself, "Ah, youth." But, seeing that the two were clearly a good match, he knew he had no grounds to object. Let's go, Hankawa said after class, leading Kurenai to Mariboshi Kosuka's home. Uncle Kosuka, hello. I'm Kurenai Yuhi, Kurenai said politely. Yuhi Shinku's daughter. Kosuka examined her for a moment and sighed. I can't believe his daughter is already this grown up. You knew my father? Kurenai asked in surprise. We were temporary teammates on a mission once, Kosuka explained. Ninja teams typically consisted of 3 fixed members. However, for certain missions that required additional manpower or in cases where fixed teammates had died, temporary teammates were assigned. Kurenai felt a sense of relief. If Kosuka knew her father, it would make her request easier. She glanced at Hankawa, then mustered her courage and asked, Uncle Kosuka, may I learn water release from you? Water release? Kosuka's eyes lit up. You came at the perfect time. I've already taught Hankawa everything I can, and I've been bored. Hankawa's exceptional talent had allowed him to quickly grasp Konoha style, Willow. Now, all he needed was time to master it completely. 70. Hitaki Sakumo's gratitude. On Saturday, Hankawa had just opened his door when he was greeted by an excited voice. Hankawa! Look at this! Kurenai ran up to him, beaming. Look at what? Hankawa asked, yawning. Kurenai didn't answer immediately. Instead, she twirled around in front of him. It was then that Hankawa noticed she was wearing a white tracksuit and had tied her hair into a single ponytail. The new look gave her an energetic and sporty vibe, quite different from her usual loose hairstyle. She appeared full of vitality. Not bad, very lively, Hankawa said, smiling and nodding in approval. Kurenai flashed a bright smile. What are you two up to? A curious Yuhi Shinku stepped out of his room. Isn't it Saturday? Are you going out? We're heading to Uncle Kosuka's place, Kurenai said firmly, clenching her fists. I'm determined to master water release today. Kosuka. Water release? Shinku's eyes widened in surprise. What was going on? Not only was his daughter doing something unexpected, but she also seemed to be making a decision that went against their family's traditions. Was she giving up on genjutsu? It's like this, Hankawa began, explaining the situation. However, he left out the part where he had encouraged Kurenai to learn water release. Instead, he claimed that Kosuka was teaching her as a favor to Shinku. I didn't expect old Kosuka to still remember me, Shinku said happily after hearing the explanation. Kurenai blinked, aware that Hankuwa had told a small lie, but she chose not to expose him. "Kurenai," Shinku said, "even though Kosuke is a genin, his skills shouldn't be underestimated. Learn well under him." After giving it some thought, he concluded that learning water release wasn't a bad idea. After all, genjutsu could always be dispelled. As a girl, Kurenai learning taijutsu or swordsmanship like Hankuwa didn't seem very elegant, but water release was a good alternative. Moreover, Shinku knew that Kosuke's water release techniques were directly taught by the second Hokage, an opportunity not to be missed. "Got it, Dad. We're off." After breakfast, Kurenai grabbed Hankuwa's hand and ran outside. "Slow down," Shinku called after them. "Don't exercise right after eating breakfast." "Okay," Kurenai shouted back without turning her head. The March sunshine was neither too warm nor too cold, making it a perfect day. Walking hand in hand down the street, they passed by mostly closed shops since it was still early on a weekend. "Since when has there been a new ramen shop here?" Kurenai asked, noticing an Ichiraku ramen stand nearby. "Let's try it when it opens," Hankuwa said, glancing at the stand and spotting a man in a white chef's uniform. It was unmistakably Tucci. In the original story, Ichiraku ramen was one of the safest places in Konoha. Even when pain destroyed the village, the ramen shop remained untouched, leading fans to jokingly theorize that Tucci was secretly a powerful figure. "Okay," Kurenai replied, her face lighting up with excitement. For her, the highlight wasn't the food but the company. Before long, they arrived at Kosuke's home. "Uncle Kosuke." Kurenai and Hankuwa greeted in unison. "Good morning," Kosuke said with a warm, grandfatherly smile. He had always been a solitary person, but the presence of these two lively kids brought him great joy. After exchanging pleasantries, they began training. Hankuwa, with his katana in hand, focused on refining his techniques. "Kurenai," Kosuke said after some thought, "I've already taught you the basics of water release over the past few days. Today, we'll work on water release, wild water wave. It's a fundamental water release technique and not too difficult." "Got it," Kurenai replied enthusiastically. Kurenai was visibly excited, nodding repeatedly. "The power of this jutsu depends on the amount of chakra you output," Kosuke Mariboshi explained. Forming hand seals, he opened his mouth and released a small wave of water, no larger than the size of an arm. Then, he performed the technique again, this time unleashing what could only be described as a river. "Amazing!" Kurenai exclaimed, unable to contain her excitement. "This feels way more practical than genjutsu." Hankuwa tugged at the corners of his mouth, suppressing a smile. Good thing Yuhi Shinku wasn't around to hear this. If he were, it might result in a scolding, if not for his daughter, then certainly out of frustration. But Hankuwa knew Kurenai didn't mean to undermine genjutsu. Compared to water release, genjutsu's effectiveness wasn't necessarily inferior. It was just that water release had a much stronger visual impact, which made it more exciting for a beginner. Setting his thoughts aside, Hankuwa continued his training. At the Hokage's office standing at the door, Tsukumo Hatake hesitated for a few moments before raising his hand to knock. "Come in," came Hiruzen Sarutobi's calm voice. Tsukumo opened the door and stepped inside. "Oh, Tsukumo," Hiruzen greeted him with a smile. "What brings you here today?" "I came to express my gratitude regarding those rumors," Tsukumo said, bowing slightly. He had heard the rumors circulating about him in the village but chose to ignore them, staying true to his own ninja code. However, just a few days ago, he noticed that all the gossip had suddenly disappeared. Only a handful of individuals in Konoha had the authority and ability to silence such rumors, and the third Hokage was undoubtedly the most likely candidate. Realizing this, Tsukumo felt both relieved and grateful. In his mind, Hiruzen Sarutobi represented the will of fire. For the Hokage to take his side affirmed that his actions had not been wrong. It was Tsunade who requested it, Hiruzen said with a smile. Tsunade? Tsukumo froze for a moment, surprised. That was unexpected. While Tsunade was a member of Konoha's upper ranks, she wasn't known for intervening in such matters like Danzo Shimura. She's in the mission hall right now, Hiruzen added casually, puffing on his pipe. You can thank her directly if you like. Thank you, Lord Hokage, Tsukumo said, bowing again before leaving the office. Hiruzen watched his retreating figure, taking a slow drag from his pipe. He understood Tsukumo well. If Tsunade had done him a favor and also harbored ambitions to become Hokage, Tsukumo would likely step aside, or even support her candidacy. At the mission hall, Tsunade had just finalized Hankawa's first mission, traveling to the Land of Water to rendezvous with a Konoha intelligence operative. The mission was classified as B rank, meaning there was a likelihood of encountering enemy ninja, but not Jonin, most likely only Chunin-level opponents. Beyond the moderate difficulty, Tsunade's main reason for selecting this mission was to expose Hankawa to the harsh realities of the ninja world. The Land of Water and Kirigakure were ideal backdrops for such a lesson. As she reviewed the details, a familiar figure approached. Tsunade, Tsukumo Hatake said as he walked up to her. Thank you for your help with those rumors. Tsunade raised an eyebrow slightly, quickly guessing Hiruzen's intentions. It was Hankawa who asked me to help, Tsunade replied with a small smile. If you want to thank someone, thank that kid. Tsukumo was momentarily stunned. How did this matter involve Hankawa? Because of Kakashi, he was somewhat acquainted with Hankawa, but at the end of the day, the boy was just a child. It felt unbelievable that someone so young could play a role in such an issue. Regardless, I'm grateful to you, Tsukumo said, bowing slightly again. 71. First Mission Water Style, Wild Water Wave. Kurenai Yuhi stood in front of a tree, forming seals with her hands. Chakra surged, flowing out from her throat and transforming into a stream of water. With a crisp sound, a visible mark appeared on the tree trunk. Kurenai froze for a moment, then turned and ran excitedly. She rushed over to Hankawa, exclaiming, I did it, Hankawa. Seeing her bouncing with joy, especially her swaying single ponytail, Hankawa couldn't help but reach out. He grabbed her soft hair, ruffling her head as he said, Congratulations. Kurenai blushed, lowering her head and letting him continue. At that moment, Hankawa noticed Tsukumo Hatake approaching from a distance. Kurenai has great talent, commented Kosuke Mariboshi at the right time. With more effort, she could become an excellent water-style ninja. Thank you, Uncle Kosuke, Kurenai quickly stepped back, realizing something. Hankawa casually withdrew his hands. It's nothing. Kosuke laughed heartily. Spending time with you kids makes me feel younger. Uncle Kosuke, you're already young at heart, Kurenai responded sweetly. True. Kosuke laughed even more joyfully. By now, Tsukumo had come closer but didn't interrupt. Lord Tsukumo, Kosuke greeted him first. Kosuke, it's been a while, Tsukumo replied with a smile. Despite being a genin, Kosuke was powerful and had completed missions with many jonin. I'm here to see Hankawa, Tsukumo stated his purpose. Let's end training for today, Kosuke said, glancing at the sky. You can continue tomorrow. Yes, Hankawa nodded slightly. All right. Kurenai's face was still flushed with excitement, partly due to Hankawa earlier. Uncle Tsukumo, Hankawa asked curiously, what brings you to me? To thank you, Tsukumo explained briefly, referring to a rumor he had heard. I didn't do much, it was mostly thanks to my teacher, Hankawa said, shaking his head. I understand, but your reminder helped a lot, Tsukumo acknowledged. He knew Tsunade's identity and strength had been critical. Do you know how I heard about it? Hankawa asked directly. From Kakashi. Tsukumo was slightly stunned. It was Kakashi. A warm feeling spread through him. Beyond his surprise, he felt pride and joy at Kakashi's thoughtfulness. Kakashi cares about you, Yuchuan hinted. He admires your ideals and wants to be a ninja like you. That kid midline horizontal ellipsis, Tsukumo's lips curved into a smile he couldn't hold back. Unlike Tsukumo, Kakashi was quiet and rarely expressed his feelings. Hearing such praise from Hankawa made it all the more meaningful. At that moment, Tsukumo resolved to be a good role model and not disappoint his son. Thank you, Hankawa, Tsukumo said, patting his shoulder. Kakashi is lucky to have a friend like you. Uncle Tsukumo, you're too kind. I'm also happy to be friends with Kakashi, Hankawa replied with a smile. Just then, 2 lines of text appeared in front of him. D-Rank Talent Effect, 10 Mouth upgraded. Hand seal speed increased by 100%. An upgrade? Was it because he convinced Tsukumo Hatake? Or because he influenced Kakashi Hatake? Either way, this was an undeniable win for him. A 100% increase in seal formation speed was a tangible boost. Take the water style, water dragon bullet technique as an example. Under normal circumstances, it requires 44 hand seals. According to the system, Hankawa could now perform the technique with the equivalent speed of forming just 22 seals in the same amount of time. Time was life, especially in combat. Goodbye, Uncle Tsukumo, Hankawa said as he and Kurenai Yuhi bid farewell. Tsukumo had initially planned to treat them to some barbecue, but Hankawa declined, promising to do it next time. At the crossroads, Hankawa stopped. He let go of Kurenai's small hand and said, "You head home first, I'm going to see my teacher." All right, Kurenai replied, a little reluctant but obedient. I'll bring you some takoyaki on my way back, Hankawa said with a smile. I'll wait for you. Kurenai's spirits lifted as she responded cheerfully. They waved at each other until Hankawa turned and walked away. Only then did Kurenai withdraw her gaze. I wonder if Tsukumo Hatake will still choose to commit suicide after that disastrous mission. Hankawa pondered as he walked. He had done his best in this matter. Tsukumo's suicide in the original timeline had multiple causes: the accusations of his comrades, the losses incurred by the Land of Fire, and the silence of Konoha's higher UPS. In the face of isolation, his spirit crumbled, and he chose to end his life. Now, with Tsunade involved, it represented a different stance from Konoha's leadership. Even if a significant loss occurred, it might not lead him to suicide. Of course, this was all just Hankoa's speculation. Whether his efforts would work could only be verified with time. In the original story, the details of that mission weren't mentioned, so Hankoa couldn't warn him in advance. "Teacher, I'm back," Hankoa called as he pushed open the door and walked into the living room. As usual, Tsunade was lounging on the sofa, but this time, there was a scroll in front of her. Konoha's scrolls came in various types: jutsu scrolls, summoning scrolls, mission scrolls, etc. This one was a mission scroll. Without hesitation, Hankoa picked it up and opened it. The scroll's contents were detailed, but to summarize, they were to go to the Land of Water to rendezvous with Konoha intelligence agents. Given that it was a rendezvous mission, it was highly likely they'd encounter pursuit and engage in combat. "Here," Tsunade said, sitting up and handing him a wallet. "What's this for?" Hankoa asked, surprised. "We're heading to the Land of Water. It's a long journey, and we must prepare adequately," Tsunade said seriously. "The academy should have taught you survival skills. I'm giving you money to buy the necessary supplies for the trip." "Understood. I'll go right now," Hankoa replied, recognizing that Tsunade was using this mission as a lesson in practical survival, not just combat. "If you don't buy enough, there will be a penalty," Tsunade warned, crossing her arms. Her earlier seriousness faded, replaced by her usual laziness. "Got it," Hankoa said, taking the wallet and heading out. He went to the commercial district and bought items such as a tent, sleeping bag, map, ration pills, and smoke bombs. "Not bad," Tsunade said after inspecting his purchases. "Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, meet at the village gate with everything you've bought." Since this was Hankoa's first mission outside the village, Tsunade planned for them to travel on foot. 72. Come here, sleep together a new day. At the breakfast table, Kurenai Yuhi was sulking. She had just learned that Hankoa was leaving today for a mission. That wasn't the worst part, the mission would take 1 or 2 weeks, maybe even longer. Kurenai. Her father, Shinka Yuhi, glanced at Hankoa, then forced a smile and asked her, "Do you want some milk? I can pour it for you." "No." Kurenai turned her head away, giving him no attention at all. Shinku's expression stiffened, and he hesitated to say more. "Kurenai, this mission came up suddenly. I only found out about it last night," Hankoa said as he poured a glass of milk and handed it to her. "Next time, if I get the chance, I'll take you with me." "Really?" Kurenai immediately turned to look at him. "For sure," Hankoa nodded slightly. "I promise." Typically, after graduating from the Ninja Academy, teams are assigned. Hankoa was already planning to have Tsunade work behind the scenes to ensure Kurenai was on his team. As for the third teammate, he hadn't decided yet. "Okay." Kurenai took the milk and happily took a sip. Midline horizontal ellipsis, Shinku, completely ignored, instinctively clenched his fists. "Damn it, Hankoa. You better take care of Kurenai." Shinku sighed deeply. What else could he do? He was utterly resigned. "Will you see the ocean when you go to the Land of Water?" Kurenai asked curiously. "Probably," Yuchuan replied, taking a bite of his egg roll. "Do you like the ocean?" "Not really, but I want to see it," Kurenai said, pushing her milk toward him. "Here, you can have it." "No need," Hankawa shook his head. I can pour my own. I can't finish it, Kurenai said, looking a little embarrassed. Can I drink it then? Shinku couldn't help but interject. Dad, you're an adult. Why are you still drinking milk? Kurenai quickly shot him down. Fine. So that's how it is. His last hope was crushed. Shinku felt completely defeated. After breakfast, Hankawa and Kurenai left the house together. Come back as soon as you can, Kurenai said, her mood dropping as they prepared to part. I will, Hankawa reassured her, patting her head. Help me explain to Kakashi and the others that I can't train with them for a while. Okay. Kurenai nodded. Go on to school now, Hankawa said, pulling his hand back. Kurenai lingered for several seconds, looking back repeatedly before finally saying goodbye and leaving. Hankawa waved her off, then turned toward Konoha's village gate. At the gate, 2 guards checked his paperwork before letting him through. As a ninja, leaving the village required the Hokage's approval. Hankawa didn't go far, instead, he stayed to wait for Tsunade. While waiting, he studied the 2 gate guards. Clearly, they weren't the same Kotetsu Hagane and Izumo Kamizuki from the original story. Sensei, you're late. 15 minutes later, Hankawa saw Tsunade approaching and couldn't resist teasing her. Being late is a teacher's privilege, Tsunade replied, raising a hand to flick his forehead. Don't be so nosy, kid. You're a ninja, MMPH. Before Hankawa could finish, Tsunade covered his mouth. A faint, pleasant fragrance filled his nose. Hankawa resisted the urge to bite her. During the mission, you must follow my orders. Understood. Tsunade let go of her hand and asked. Understood. Hankawa forced a smile. You're the boss, so you're always right. Take out the map, Tsunade said with a satisfied smile. The first thing you need to do is plan a proper route. Got it. Hankawa took out the map he had purchased the day before. The Land of Water was located southeast of the Land of Fire and required travel by ship. With a ninja's average running speed, it was a 3 to 4 day journey. Opening the map, Hankawa quickly drew a route. Not bad, Tsunade said after glancing at it. You avoided crowded areas but didn't take unnecessary detours. I am the top student at the Ninja Academy, Hankawa replied with a smile, putting the map away. This kind of task is a piece of cake. Being top of your class means nothing, Tsunade said as she suddenly pulled him into a tight hold, her tone serious. Out here, even the smallest overlooked detail can cost you your life. What kind of rough teaching method is this? Pressed tightly against her, it took Hankawa a moment to process what she was saying. He realized Tsunade was far stricter than he'd expected. Yes, sensei, Hankawa said obediently. That's more like it. Tsunade released him and said, let's move out. With a leap, she began running in the classic ninja sprint. Hankawa followed closely behind. Tsunade adjusted her speed to accommodate him, ensuring she wasn't running too fast. While running, she didn't remain silent but instead began lecturing him, covering topics like spotting potential traps or identifying traces left by humans and animals. These subjects had been taught in class, but never in such detail. Hankawa listened while running, and time passed quickly. As night fell, the two reached the southeastern edge of the Land of Fire, not far from the coastline. Hankawa, Tsunade said, stopping. Find a spot to set up the tent. We'll head to the port tomorrow. Understood, sensei. Activating the 8x zoom effect from his D-rank trait, Tool Mastery, Hankawa quickly found a good spot. It was a secluded area in a small forest near a river, dense with branches, leaves, and tall grass, providing excellent cover. Hankawa set up the tent and laid simple traps around it, both to ward off wild animals and as an early warning system. Tsunade silently observed his every move. She had to admit that Hankawa's reputation as the Academy's top student was well deserved. She didn't find any major issues in his approach. One tent is enough, Tsunade said as she entered the tent and turned back. Come in and sleep together. Huh? Hankawa froze in shock. No, sensei, please no. I'm not going to eat you, Tsunade said with amusement, seeing his reaction. Alright, I'm coming in, Hankawa said reluctantly as he entered the tent. In the wild, the less noise you make, the better, Tsunade said, sitting across from him. And when sleeping in a sleeping bag, always sleep in your clothes to be ready for emergencies. Understood, Hankawa replied, feeling a twinge of disappointment. It was clear Tsunade was serious. Throughout the day, she had been meticulously teaching him even the smallest details, as if she were trying to spoon-feed him. Eat and then sleep, Tsunade said, pulling out 2 portions of rations. Hankawa sighed. The so-called rations consisted of pre-made rice balls and sushi. They were midline horizontal ellipsis edible, but nowhere near as satisfying as hot food. After eating, the sky was completely dark. Without a candle, the tent was pitch black. Tsunade slid into her sleeping bag, leaving only her head exposed. She looked at Hankawa and said, "Come here." 73. The future Mizukage Terumi Mei. Under the night sky, a petite figure suddenly appeared in the dark. She was dressed in a gray standard-issue flak jacket, her face hidden behind a cat-shaped mask, with only a pair of bright green eyes visible. Her reddish-brown hair swayed gently in the wind. Standing at about 1.23 meters tall, she was clearly just a little girl. This is human blood. Looks like we're on the right track, she muttered. She scanned the area, soon spotting bloodstains on a leaf. Reaching out, she pinched the dried blood between her fingers. Terumi Mei, what's the situation? 2 figures landed behind her. They wore the same outfit and masks, but these 2 were adults, towering over her. Senior Cod, please use my codename during missions, Terumi Mei replied sternly. Oh, come on. Such an uptight junior, Cod said with a chuckle, shaking his head. Let's move. Terumi Mei glanced at him and said, the sooner we capture him, the better. Don't worry. He won't escape, said Scallop, the other adult ninja. That's right. He's just a mere chunin, Cod agreed with a nod before suggesting, but we've been chasing him all day. How about we rest for the night and continue tomorrow? This is my first mission from Elder Genji. I cannot afford any mistakes, Terumi Mei said, leaping into the night. Let's go, Cod muttered with a sigh before following her. Scallop trailed close behind. Inside the tent, Hankawa lay beside Tsunade. In the darkness, he could hear the sounds of insects and birds outside, along with her steady breathing. It's your first time on a mission. How does it feel? Tsunade asked, turning to look at him. It's great, Hankawa replied after a brief pause. Especially you, sensei. I've never seen you this serious before. What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying I'm not serious normally? Tsunade huffed, lifting her hand to flick his forehead. What do you think? Hankawa shot back with a smirk. I am serious. Tsunade protested, though her tone wavered slightly. In the darkness, her guilty expression was hidden from sight. Hankawa fell silent. He thought he had a thick skin, but clearly, Tsunade was on another level. Tomorrow, we'll enter the land of water. You need to be extra cautious, Tsunade said, changing the subject. Do you know what Hidden Mist Village is also called? What? Hankawa asked, following her lead. The Village of the Bloody Mist, Tsunade said in a grave tone. The Hidden Mist has always enforced a cruel and oppressive policy, particularly targeting ninja with Kekei Genkai. In his past life, Hankawa had assumed the Bloody Mist era was a result of the fourth Mizukage Yagura being controlled by Uchiha Obito. But that wasn't entirely accurate. The oppressive policies had already existed during the third Mizukage's reign. Obito merely escalated them. Not long ago, something major happened in the Hidden Mist, Tsunade continued. A student named Zabuza Momochi killed all his classmates during their graduation exam. Hankawa's heart stirred. Zabuza Momochi, in the original series, was one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist's second generation. After failing to assassinate Yagura, he became a rogue ninja. While working for a merchant named Gato, he encountered Kakashi Hataki's Team 7 and ultimately died at their hands. By his side was a young companion named Haku, who excelled in ice release techniques and had a penchant for wearing feminine clothing. Such slaughter is common in the Hidden Mist, Tsunade said, reaching out to pat his head. You must be extremely careful. Yes, sensei, Hankawa replied with a nod. Get some sleep. We need to wake up early tomorrow, Tsunade said, withdrawing her hand and closing her eyes. Soon, her breathing became slow and steady. Morning, the warm sunlight filtered through the trees, casting its glow on the tent. Hankawa opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Tsunade's outline, rising and falling gently with her breaths. Only then did he realize that, at some point during the night, he and Tsunade had ended up leaning against each other. Sensei. Hankawa sat up, unzipping his sleeping bag. Any activity last night? Tsunade quickly woke up. Though she loved sleeping in, during missions, she was every bit the professional ninja. The traps I set didn't go off, Hankawa said as he stepped outside the tent to check. That's good, Tsunade replied with a yawn. She packed up her sleeping bag, stretched lazily outside the tent, and said, take out the map. Hankawa unfolded the map and placed it in front of her. This is the rendezvous point, Tsunade said, pointing to a spot on the map. Memorize the route. You'll be the one meeting our contact. And what about you? Hankawa asked, startled. I'll be watching from a distance, Tsunade said calmly. I'll only step in if you face an enemy you can't defeat. I understand. Hankawa felt a chill of pressure run through him. Though he had some advantages, this was his first mission involving combat. Here, take this. Tsunade handed him a Konoha headband. Wear this, so our contact will trust you. Hankawa reached for it, but Tsunade moved behind him and tied the headband onto his forehead herself. Stay safe, she said with a complicated expression. The last person she had personally fitted with a headband had been Nawaki. "I will," Hankawa said, nodding lightly. The two ate breakfast, dismantled the tent, and took a boat to the land of water. After they disembarked, Tsunade gave him a brief farewell and disappeared. Hankawa took a deep breath, activating his enhanced vision ability. Since he hadn't learned sensory ninjutsu, his long-range vision became indispensable. Confirming his bearings, he headed toward the rendezvous point. At the rendezvous point, Hankawa soon arrived at a small forest. Their meeting spot was at the northernmost tree, where the intelligence agent from the hidden leaf would hide in the branches. Rather than showing himself immediately, Hankawa stood at a distance, scanning the area with his enhanced vision. He watched for a while and frowned. There was no one in the tree. Could something have gone wrong? After thinking for a moment, he decided to remain hidden and continued to wait. Footsteps approaching after some time, Hankawa suddenly turned his head. He heard heavy footsteps. Through his enhanced vision, he saw a young man stagger into view, injured and looking utterly battered. Behind him followed a petite figure. A hidden mist umbu. Hankawa instinctively grasped the hilt of his katana. The young man was clearly the Leaf intelligence agent. If he died, the mission would fail. Hankawa had to save him. But there was something odd about the hidden mist umbu. So young, yet already an umbu. She was undoubtedly a prodigy. So, who was protecting her? Hankawa released his grip on his katana and formed hand seals. Clone Jutsu. A duplicate of Hankawa appeared at his side. He fixed his gaze on the umbu. Just as she was about to reach the injured young man, he flung 4 kunai toward her. Without waiting to see the result, he bolted. "Who's there?" Terumi Mei's voice rang out as she quickly retreated, dodging the incoming kunai. "Watch out!" Kod's voice followed. Terumi Mei steadied herself, noticing that one of the kunai was rigged with an explosive tag. Boom! The tag detonated. Did it work? Hankawa glanced back through his enhanced vision, only to shake his head. A water wall had risen in front of Terumi Mei, absorbing the explosion. It wasn't a complete failure, though. Kod had intervened to protect her. Meanwhile, Scallop traced the direction of the kunai and spotted Hankawa's clone. While the clone was of no use in a direct fight, Hankawa now had a clear sense of their numbers. 74. Clash of Geniuses, what's the situation on your side? Kod asked as he glanced at Scallop. It's just a kid from the hidden leaf, Scallop replied with a shake of his head. But it's only a clone, I couldn't find the real body. A kid? Terumi Mei couldn't help but ask, how old? About your age, Scallop answered. There's no way he's alone, Terumi Mei thought aloud. Scallop-senpai, continue pursuing the escapee. Kod-senpai, search the area for other ninja. Looks like that kid's in trouble now that our little genius has her sights set on him, Kod chuckled. Terumi Mei didn't bother responding. Strong-willed by nature, she always paid back any losses she suffered. Let's move. Scallop sprinted across the ground, following the trail of the injured leaf agent. Be careful, Kod cautioned before vanishing. Terumi Mei's expression turned serious. She formed hand seals and activated her sensory ninjutsu. Over there. She let out a soft hum and darted into the forest. Split strategies using his enhanced vision, Hankawa observed their actions. They're splitting up. After a few seconds of hesitation, Hankawa decided to withdraw. In most cases, except for prodigies, anyone joining the Umbu was at least an elite chunin or higher. He knew he couldn't defeat them, and resolved to leave this to Tsunade. As Terumi Mei approached his position, Hankawa prepared 2 kunai in his hands before making them vanish from sight. Water release, water formation wall. Terumi Mei reacted swiftly, summoning a water wall from the ground. The kunai struck the water wall, creating 2 deep craters. Terumi Mei's pupils shrank. How can these kunai have so much power, she thought, momentarily stunned. In that brief distraction, 2 more kunai flew toward her, colliding with the first 2. Boom! The water wall shattered. Terumi Mei instinctively drew a kunai. While dodging, she swung at the closest incoming kunai. The force of the impact sent a powerful shockwave through her hand. Her face paled as she immediately released the kunai and rolled away to increase the distance. Before she could catch her breath, she heard a noise above her. She looked up to see a crescent arc of blade light descending toward her. Impossible. He was over there just now. How did he? Am I going to die here? The next moment, a dragon's roar echoed from her left. A water dragon materialized and surged toward Hankawa, roaring in fury. It was Kod's intervention. While searching for other possible Konoha ninja, Kod had kept a close eye on Terumi Mei. As a genius highly regarded by Elder Genji, her safety was paramount. If something happened to her, none of them could bear the consequences. What Kod didn't expect was how quickly she'd been cornered. Though still young, Terumi Mei's exceptional talent in water release jutsu far exceeded that of an average chunin, making her a formidable opponent. Hankawa frowned slightly. Wasting no time, he executed his most advantageous move. Sheathing his blade mid-air, he launched a powerful kick, landing it squarely on Terumi Mei. Her mask shattered instantly as she was sent flying. Mid-spin, Hankawa pivoted sharply and unleashed a wind chakra-infused slash at the water dragon. The blade's cutting edge cleaved the dragon in 2. Damn it! Terumi Mei's cheek was swollen, but she didn't dare waste time. She wiped the blood from her mouth and stumbled to her feet. You okay? Kod appeared next to her in an instant. Just a scratch, Terumi Mei replied through gritted teeth. We can't let him get away. Kod nodded slightly, but as he turned to look, he realized Hankawa had already vanished. He won't escape, Terumi Mei declared. She quickly formed seals again, activating her sensory ninjutsu. Whoosh! 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 As she turned, 3 shuriken whizzed toward her. Kod had been prepared long before. He used the body flicker technique to follow the shuriken. With 3 sharp clangs, Hankawa blocked all the shuriken with his katana. But his vision blurred, and suddenly, Kod appeared right in front of him. Kid, this is the end. Kod sneered coldly, convinced he had already won and eager to see the fear in Hankawa's eyes. A genius? So what? Kod specialized in killing geniuses. Without hesitation, he raised his blade. Blood splattered. Kod-senpai. Terumi Mei's eyes widened in shock, instinctively shouting. What she saw, however, was Kod striking a tree. An illusion. Terumi Mei quickly formed hand seals. Water release, water whip. A whip formed from water coiled in her hand and lashed out fiercely. Body flicker technique. Hankoa kicked off a tree trunk, propelling himself like an arrow straight at Terumi Mei. Despite her young age, this was a battle, and mercy had no place here. Smack! Terumi Mei flicked her wrist, causing the water whip to recoil, but her speed was just a fraction too slow. Hankoa ignored the whip behind him and slashed at Terumi Mei. The strike hit, but her body dispersed into water. A water clone. Hankoa froze for a split second, realizing the trap. He instinctively turned. A water dragon surged toward him with a deafening roar. Hankoa sprinted as he formed hand seals. Just as the dragon was about to strike, he activated the body flicker technique, leaving an afterimage behind. Terumi Mei's face paled. Even that didn't work. Prideful by nature, she was beginning to feel deeply frustrated. In the hidden mist village, not even Zabuza Momochi, infamous for slaughtering his classmates, could defeat her. As the undisputed genius of her generation, she found herself at a loss against a mere boy from the hidden leaf. Hankoa exhaled in relief. His C-rank ability, swift as the wind, which doubled his movement speed, along with the body flicker technique, had saved him. Looking at Terumi Mei, Hankoa started piecing things together. That reddish-brown hair, mastery of water release at this age. This must be the future 5th Mizukage. Damn you! Cod finally broke free of the genjutsu, his face twisted in anger as he charged at Hankoa. The humiliation of being trapped in an 8-year-old's illusion burned deeply. Hankoa had anticipated this. He knew the genjutsu wouldn't hold an elite jonin for long. Casually, he hurled 3 kunai. Kunai won't do a thing to me, what the? Cod's expression changed drastically. The 3 kunai were wrapped in thick layers of explosive tags. By his estimate, there were at least 9 tags in total, equivalent to a full-power fire release attack from a jonin. Retreat! Retreat! Cod yelled as he bolted back at top speed. Terumi Mei's instincts screamed danger, and without hesitation, she leapt away. Boom! A massive explosion tore through the area, flames engulfing the forest and leaving nearby trees scorched and blackened. Good thing I'm rich, Hankoa muttered as he leapt onto a tree branch. Knowing Terumi Mei's sensory abilities, he didn't dare linger. Body flicker technique. Using the light of the fire as cover, Hankoa darted through the forest. Cod had barely regained his footing when he heard the sound of something slicing through the air at high speed. Instinctively, he tried to dodge, but it was too late. Blood spurted out as a deep gash opened on his right arm. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Cod rolled to the ground to escape. Hankoa stopped pursuing him and turned his gaze to Terumi Mei. Despite his delicate and handsome features, his blood-splattered appearance gave him a menacing aura. Terumi Mei's heart pounded, and she instinctively took 2 steps back, her confidence visibly shaken. 75. Terumi Mei's defeat. I am doomed. The young man stared at the vast ocean before him, his face filled with despair. With no path ahead and pursuers closing in behind, he had no way to escape. Don't resist. I won't kill you. A voice from behind him echoed, calm and composed. The young man was a defector from Kirigakure, fleeing with vital intelligence. At the same time, he was also a spy for Konoha. The best course of action was to capture him alive, extract the information stored in his mind, and obtain valuable intelligence. You won't succeed. Determined, the young man wore an expression of defiance, ready to face death. It won't be that easy. The pursuer, a man known as Scallop, could see his intentions to end his own life. With a swift movement, he appeared directly in front of the young man. Before Scallop could react, a sandbag-sized fist suddenly appeared in his line of sight. The next moment, he felt his body flying through the air. He landed like a cannonball, crashing to the ground with a loud boom. The ground cracked around him, sending dust and debris flying everywhere. The young man stood frozen, eyes wide in shock. This sudden turn of events left him completely stunned. Instinctively, he turned his head to see Tsunade standing not far away. Her cloak, emblazoned with the word, "gamble," fluttered in the wind. "La! Lady Tsunade." The young man recognized her immediately, his face lighting up with joy as if he'd been rescued from the jaws of death. Tsunade. Could the information he carried be that important? Though he couldn't quite understand, he knew one thing: he had survived. "Come with me." Tsunade turned and headed into the forest. She was worried about Hankoa, who was handling two enemies on her own. The young man quickly followed her. Soon, Tsunade arrived at the battlefield. She stopped, surprised by what she saw. The situation was much better than she had anticipated. Hankoa had managed to gain the upper hand against the combined assault of a Chunin and a special Jonin. Tsunade smiled with pride. Truly, Hankoa was her student. But her expression quickly grew serious. It wasn't that Hankoa was losing ground, Tsunade had sensed another presence nearby. Someone else was watching. It seemed the other side had the same goal, training their village's prodigies. Unfortunately, they had crossed paths. This could get tricky. While Tsunade wasn't afraid of a fight, she had two burdens to look after. Back in the forest, the battle shifted again. Although Hankoa's strength intimidated Terumi Mei, the latter quickly regained her composure. Water release, water dragon bullet technique. With her hands moving rapidly in a flurry of seals, Terumi Mei's chakra surged. But before she could unleash the technique, Hankoa was already upon her. Too slow. Hankoa gripped his blade with both hands and slashed at Terumi Mei. Terumi Mei's hand seal speed was impressive, but it wasn't enough against Hankoa's mastery of body flicker and enhanced speed. Just then, a terrifying sound pierced the air, as if a meteor had been hurled into the ocean. Hankoa's face froze. A massive blade, nearly twice his height, swung toward his with terrifying force. Recognizing the blade instantly, Hankoa's eyes widened. It was the executioner's blade, a massive, iconic weapon. In the original story, this blade belonged to Zabuza Momochi. Before him, it was wielded by Juzo Biwa. This is bad. I'm a stand-in for Naruto now. Hankoa realized he was in a situation akin to Naruto's first mission outside the village, facing a Jonin-level enemy. The only difference was Naruto's mission was ranked C, while his was ranked B. A graceful figure stepped forward. Tsunade moved in front of Hankoa, her fist flying toward the incoming blade. The executioner's blade rebounded immediately. As expected of Princess Tsunade, a man said as he stepped out, catching the rebounding blade. However, his arm trembled slightly from the impact. The man had short black hair, a cross-shaped scar on his right cheek, and red markings painted below his mouth. Juzo biwa, Tsunade said calmly, grabbing Terumi Mei with ease. The latter struggled for a moment before giving up. She still retained her wild and defiant demeanor, glaring at Hankawa fiercely. "What are you staring at?" Hankawa, unfazed, reached out and patted her head amidst her furious glare. "This is the treatment for losers," he said with a cheeky grin. Finally, he got a chance to pat someone's head other than Kurenai. "You bastard! Just you wait." Terumi Mei was trembling with anger. If Tsunade hadn't restrained her, she would have bitten him on the spot. "Sure," Hankawa replied nonchalantly. Looking around, he spotted her wallet and snatched it. "You shameless thief." Terumi Mei gritted her teeth in frustration. "Want to keep insulting me?" Hankawa raised an eyebrow and added menacingly, "Do you believe I'll?" Before he could finish, Terumi Mei went completely silent, shivering slightly. She had no doubt this guy was capable of something even more outrageous. "Princess Tsunade, let's make a deal," Juzo Biwa suggested. Glancing at Terumi Mei, he continued, "Return her to us, and I'll let you leave unharmed. You may be strong, but we have numbers. If we fight, you won't be able to protect the other two." As he spoke, another squad of Kirigakure Umbu appeared nearby. The stolen intelligence wasn't particularly significant, it was only because they wanted to test Terumi Mei that this pursuit had escalated. "Fine," Tsunade agreed without hesitation. "Thank you for your cooperation," Juzo said, extending his hand in a gesture of goodwill. "Please, go ahead." "You two, leave now," Tsunade instructed Hankawa and the injured intelligence carrier. "Yes," Hankawa replied reluctantly, seeing there was no room for negotiation in her eyes. The two of them turned and ran toward the coastline. Tsunade remained behind, waiting. True to their word, Juzo Biwa and his men didn't give chase. "It seems this young lady is very important to you," Tsunade remarked with a light smile as she glanced at Terumi Mei. "Her performance just now wasn't bad at all." "Likewise," Juzo said with a smirk. "Your student was quite impressive, Princess Tsunade." Tsunade casually tossed Terumi Mei back to them and stepped backward, disappearing into the forest. Cod, one of the Kirigakure ninjas, quickly stepped forward. "I'm fine," Terumi Mei said as she landed steadily on her feet. She glanced toward the shoreline, her expression dark and uncertain. "His name is Hankawa. He's Tsunade's student and quite well known in Konoha," Juzo said with a sinister smile. "Losing to him isn't something to be ashamed of." "Hankawa." Terumi Mei clenched her fists tightly. "I'll remember you, you damned bastard." The humiliation she suffered today, she would pay it back tenfold in the future. On the boat by the shore, Hankawa felt a bit anxious until Tsunade appeared. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. "Let's go," Tsunade said as she boarded the boat. "Our mission is complete. There's no need to keep tangling with them." There was one thing she didn't say aloud. Judging by how much they valued Terumi Mei, killing her might lead to a war between Konoha and Kirigakure. Kirigakure's strength wasn't on par with Konoha, but if Kumogakure decided to exploit the situation, things could get messy. More importantly, Tsunade prioritized Hankawa's safety. She wouldn't risk putting him in danger. "Understood," Hankawa nodded slightly. He understood why Tsunade had chosen not to fight. At that moment, 2 lines of text appeared before his eyes, catching him off guard and filling him with joy. D-rank talent, so much water, trigger condition, defeat a young Terumi Mei. Effect, water release proficiency increased by 30%. As expected of the future Mizukiage. He had skipped past D-rank and directly gained a D-rank talent. 76. Tsunade's Iron Fist of Love. Hankawa opened Terumi Mei's wallet. The first thing that caught his eye was a stack of money. He counted, a total of 2,700 ryo. Aside from the money, there were 2 hot spring discount coupons and a bottle of blue nail polish. Hankawa smirked. The future Mizukiage sure is broke. Lady Tsunade, the spy handed over the intelligence he had stolen from Kirigakure. Good work, Tsunade said with a slight nod. She casually put it away and sat down across from Hankawa. Most freshly graduated ninjas freeze up during their first encounter with enemies, but not you. Instead, you were busy flirting with a little girl, Tsunade remarked, glancing at Terumi Mei's wallet. Flirting? What are you talking about? Hankawa replied seriously. I was just teaching a defeated kunoichi a lesson. That little girl is likely one of Kirigakure's geniuses, Tsunade said with a chuckle. Next time you meet her, it might be your turn to be taught a lesson. That won't happen, Hankawa replied, putting away the wallet. Oh. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. So confident, are you? It's because I have an excellent sensei, Hankawa said with utmost seriousness. Tsunade froze for a moment, then burst out laughing. She reached out and flicked him hard on the forehead. Am I wrong? Hankawa protested, feeling wronged. You're not wrong, Tsunade replied, crossing her arms. But, don't get cocky. Yes, sensei, Hankawa said, his eyelid twitching slightly. Tsunade's crossed-arm stance only added strain to her outfit, and Hankawa couldn't help but feel the urge to lend a hand to ease her burdens. You handled the fight well this time, Tsunade said with a small smile, praising him. Is there a reward, then? Hankawa asked, immediately pushing his luck. I'll reward you by letting you treat me to barbecue, Tsunade said, rolling her eyes. This kid really needs a beating every 3 days. How is that even a reward? Hankawa muttered. What's that? You don't want to. Tsunade clenched her fist threateningly. I do. Hankawa quickly conceded. Don't move. Tsunade suddenly thought of something. She placed her hand on his forehead. Hankawa blinked in confusion, unsure of what she was doing. A soft surge of chakra flowed from her palm. Looks like you're not injured, Tsunade said after a moment, retracting her hand. Thank you, sensei, Hankawa said, a little surprised. In battles, hidden injuries are common. If they aren't treated promptly, they could affect your growth, Tsunade warned. You might not grow taller. Not growing taller would be bad enough, but not growing up at all would be worse. Hankawa smiled and said, with you as my teacher, that definitely won't happen. Tsunade looked at him and felt a slight flutter in her heart. That handsome face paired with such a smile was truly hard to resist. Smooth talker, Tsunade huffed, looking away. I wonder how many girls you're going to break the hearts of in the future. What do you mean by break hearts? Hankawa protested. Sensei, that's slander. Time passed as the two chatted. The overlooked spy finally understood why Tsunade had been sent to escort him. It's just babysitting. I'm an afterthought. Knowing the truth, he felt tears well up in his eyes. By nightfall, he was even more bewildered and shocked. He had a tent to himself while Hankawa and Tsunade shared another tent. The next afternoon the sun shone brightly over Konoha's gates. Finally, we're back, the spy shouted excitedly the moment they reached the village. He had been a spy in Kirigakure for 6 years. 3 years turned into another 3 years, and he thought it would never end. Let's go report the mission, Tsunade said, feeling indifferent. She was more interested in heading to the gambling hall. After registering at the gate, the three entered the village. Hankawa thought of Kurenai and the others, wondering how they had fared during the past few days. Hokage's office. Tsunade kicked the door open without ceremony. The spy stood there dumbfounded. Hankawa, on the other hand, was unfazed, he was used to it. Suddenly, a thought crossed his mind, when Tsunade becomes Hokage, will I get to kick doors open too? But on second thought, he'd probably get himself killed for it. More likely, he'd end up like Danzo, constantly butting heads with Tsunade in an endless cycle of, you regret, I am Hokage. Tsunade. Hiruzen Sarutobi jumped in surprise and took a deep puff of his pipe to calm himself. The mission's complete. Hand over the reward, Tsunade said as she approached. And check if there are any new geniuses in Kirigakure. Why do you want to know that? Hiruzen asked as he tossed her a passbook. It was the reward for a B-rank mission, 160,000 ryo. Not enough. I need extra compensation, Tsunade said, shaking her head. We encountered Juzo Biwa. Juzo Biwa? What happened? Hiruzen's expression turned serious. The 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist were Kirigakure's elite, known for their strength and status. Tsunade recounted the events briefly. I see, Hiruzen said, his tone softening. The girl you mentioned must be Terumi Mei. He opened a drawer and pulled out 2 files. Tsunade skimmed through them quickly. One was Terumi Mei's, and the other was Momochi Zabuza's. These 2 were the newest geniuses of Kirigakure, already showing remarkable strength at a young age. Tsunade handed the files to Hankawa casually. Let's do this. Your mission is now upgraded to A rank, Sarutobi Hiruzen said after some thought. I'll also add 300,000 ryo to your reward. That works, Tsunade agreed, stopping her negotiations there. After reading through the files, Hankawa handed them back to Sarutobi Hiruzen. The information was mostly what he already knew, though it was more detailed than in the original timeline. You two chat. I'm done here, Tsunade said, grabbing her money and heading out. Hankawa, let's go. Unlike her, Hankawa gave a polite farewell to Sarutobi Hiruzen before hurrying after her. Thankfully, Hankawa hasn't picked up his teacher's bad habits, Sarutobi Hiruzen said with relief. The spy, standing off to the side, pretended not to hear. Sensei. Hankawa stopped Tsunade, extending his hand. Where's my share of the money? You're too young. I'll hold on to it for you, Tsunade replied with a cheerful smile. Not a chance, Hankawa said flatly. Only my mom used to say things like that, and I won't fall for it again. TCH, you little brat, Tsunade grumbled, handing him 200,000 ryo. Don't waste it. I should be saying that to you, Hankoa retorted as he tucked away the passbook. The next moment, he froze, sensing a dangerous aura. Swallowing nervously, he turned to see Tsunade walking toward him with a dark expression. She loomed over him like a legendary giant woman, ready to swallow him whole. Hankoa barely managed to speak before a large shadow engulfed him. Tsunade pulled him into a crushing hug and unleashed her iron fist of love, playfully roughing up his hair. "Sensei," Hankoa said, utterly defeated. There was no escaping her grasp, as the weight of Snow Mountain pinned him down. "Next time, it won't be so easy," Tsunade said, finally letting him go after she had her fill. "Understood," Hankoa replied half-heartedly. "You should rest now," Tsunade said after a moment of hesitation. She had originally planned to take him gambling, but after considering how tired he was from 2 days of traveling, she decided to let him off the hook. "Goodbye, Sensei," Hankoa said, waving as he left. The mission had taken nearly a week to complete, and he found himself missing Kurenai. A week doesn't seem long, but it feels like ages. Glancing at the sky, Hankoa figured it was about time for the academy to let out. After some thought, he headed toward the school. The dismissal bell rang, and students poured out of the building like they were fleeing a disaster. "Rin!" Uchiha Obito ran up with a grin. "Want to grab some ramen together?" "I need to go home and study." Rin hesitated for a moment before declining. "Is that Hankoa?" Kakashi Hataki's surprised voice came from nearby. Rin instinctively looked up. In the distance, a familiar figure caught her eye. "He's back." Rin's heart fluttered, and a joyful smile spread across her face. But someone beat her to it. "Hankoa." Kurenai Yuhi ran over immediately. Sarutobi Asuma muttered, annoyed. "I wonder what kind of mission Hankoa went on," Kakashi said enviously. He also wanted to go on missions, but his father, Tsukumo Hataki, was too busy to take him. The only way for him to start was to graduate early, though he had promised to wait until Hankoa graduated first. "It must have been some simple D-rank mission," Uchiha Obito said sourly. "Hankoa, when did you get back?" Kurenai asked, panting as she came to a stop. "Just now," Hankoa said, patting her head and smoothing down her wind-blown hair. Hankoa, Rin, and the others approached. Kurenai's face turned red as she realized something, her cheeks flushing. "I heard from Kurenai that you went on a mission to the Land of Water," Kakashi said, looking him up and down. "Did you encounter any ninjas from Kirigakure?" "I ran into a big shot," Hankoa said with a smile. "Juzo Biwa, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist." Everyone gasped. The 7 ninja swordsmen were famous, even among the younger generation. "Impossible," Uchiha Obito said, incredulous. "You met him and survived?" "That's because my sensei is even stronger," Hankoa replied with a shrug. He wasn't lying. With Tsunade's strength, defeating Juzo Biwa wasn't too difficult. Even with additional Kirigakure ANBU members, the outcome would have been the same. But Hankoa had been a burden. Tsunade had prioritized his safety and avoided unnecessary risks. Uchiha Obito's eyes filled with jealousy. "Damn it! So what if Tsunade's your teacher?" "My future teacher will definitely be someone just as incredible." "No wonder Lady Tsunade is so respected," Rin said, her expression filled with admiration. "Let's go." I'll treat you all to barbecue, Hankawa said, pulling out his passbook. I made a lot of money on this mission. Then I'm going to eat until you're broke. Asuma said without hesitation. Hankawa thought to himself, wait until you meet a student named Choji Akimichi. Then you'll understand what it means to truly go broke. Obito turned green with envy. Rin, weren't you going home to study? Why are you going too? 77. Ichiraku Ramen opens. The village of Kirigakure was silent under the night sky. Seriously? Is he insane? Terumi Mei shot up from her bed, her voice filled with frustration. She had just dreamed of Hankawa again, replaying the memory of him stealing her wallet. That bastard! Clenching her fists, she punched her blanket angrily. From a young age, Terumi Mei had been a prodigy, always standing out as one of the best. She had never suffered such a humiliating defeat. What made it worse was being bested by someone her own age. Her mind wandered to the intel she had read about Hankawa earlier that day. His specialty was medical ninjutsu, not swordsmanship or genjutsu. And yet, she had lost to his sword skills. Biting her lip, her face flushed with anger, Terumi Mei made a vow. I'll get my wallet back no matter what. The next morning, the chirping of birds filled the air outside. Hankawa sat up and stretched lazily. He had slept wonderfully last night. The past few days of camping in tents couldn't compare to the comfort of a bed. Home is the best, he muttered, getting dressed and heading to the bathroom to freshen up. Good morning, Kurenai greeted, stepping aside to make room. Good morning, Hankawa replied, taking his place beside her to brush his teeth. Nearby, Yuhi Shinku glanced at them and felt a headache coming on. Holding his bowl of ramen, he said flatly, breakfast is ready. Not long after, the three of them sat around the table. Hankawa, when's your next mission? Kurenai asked suddenly, her expression full of concern as she picked up her chopsticks. No idea, Hankawa replied, shaking his head. Sensei didn't say anything. Knowing Tsunade, he figured it wouldn't be until next month. She had already spent a week on this mission, which must have seriously cut into her gambling time. She was probably holed up at a casino by now. Kurenai, Shinku interjected, your main focus right now should be your studies. He didn't want her going on missions, mainly because he didn't think she was ready. I know. Kurenai pouted, clearly displeased. It's okay, Hankawa reassured her. Once we graduate, there'll be plenty of opportunities. That's true, Kurenai nodded, her mood improving. Shinku, however, was left speechless. Does my opinion even matter anymore? But midline horizontal ellipsis, Kurenai hesitated, a hint of worry crossing her face. I heard we'll be assigned to different squads after graduation. It's not a problem, Hankawa said with a smile. My teacher is Tsunade. I'll ask her to make arrangements. Really? Kurenai's eyes lit up with excitement. Of course, Hankawa said confidently. That's great. Kurenai exclaimed, her voice brimming with joy. Shinku cast a sidelong glare at Hankawa. This kid thinks way too far ahead. But on second thought, having Kurenai on Hankawa's team would be beneficial. After all, his teacher was Tsunade. After breakfast, Hankawa and Kurenai headed to Mariboshi Kosuka's home. With an hour left before class, they decided not to waste any time. Hankawa drew his katana and continued practicing the Konoha style, Willow technique. See you later, Uncle Kosuke. The two of them finished their training and made their way to the ninja academy. Kurenai, Hanekawa tapped her shoulder. Can I borrow that water-style training scroll Uncle Kosuke gave you? Of course, Kurenai handed him the scroll without hesitation. Are you planning to learn water-style techniques? She remembered Hanekawa's chakra nature was lightning and fire, not water. I ran into a water-style ninja in the land of water, Hanekawa explained. The fight was pretty rough, so I want to study up. When I learn water-style jutsu, I'll help you beat her. Kurenai declared, waving her tiny fists. Sounds good, Hanekawa said with a grin. At the classroom, Sarutobi Asuma greeted them cheerfully, still grateful for the barbecue Hanekawa had treated him to the day before. Oh, Hanekawa, here. Kurenai rushed to her desk and pulled out a notebook, handing it to him. Thanks, Hanekawa said, a little surprised but not refusing the gesture. He didn't really need it, but he appreciated the effort. Ugh, disgusting. Asuma muttered, feeling like he'd just been force-fed dog food. Got a problem? Kurenai shot him a sharp look. Asuma quickly sat down, hiding his face. 2 against 1. No way I can win. Hanekawa took his seat and casually flipped through the notebook. It was clear that Kurenai had put in a lot of effort, her handwriting was neat, and her notes were very detailed. Hanekawa, no error, Rin's voice called out. What's up? Hanekawa asked, glancing at the notebook she was holding. Do you need help with something? This is midline horizontal ellipsis, Rin hesitated, her words faltering as she noticed the notebook in front of Hanekawa. Someone else had beaten her to it. Never mind, Rin said softly, shaking her head before turning to leave. What was that about? Hanekawa scratched his head, feeling a bit puzzled. The bell rang, signaling the start of class. Ichiro stepped into the room, closely followed by Uchiha Obito, who rushed in and skidded to a stop. Sorry, teacher. Obito blurted out, kneeling dramatically. Just take your seat, Ichiro said with a sigh, walking to the podium. Open your textbooks. Today, we'll cover communication codes. Hanekawa set aside Kurenai's notebook and took out another book, not the textbook, but the water-style training manual. Terumi May had dropped a 30% boost to his water-style affinity, so he couldn't let it go to waste. Moreover, learning water-style ninjutsu was a prerequisite for synthesizing wood-style techniques. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps approached. Hanekawa turned his head and locked eyes with Ichiro. Blinking, he calmly continued reading the water-style training manual as though nothing had happened. Ichiro opened his mouth but hesitated. Are you seriously NTRing me right in front of my face? No matter how hard he stared, Hanekawa didn't show even the slightest hint of regret. Defeated, Ichiro gave up. Time passed, and soon it was the end of the school day. Previously, Hanekawa had trained alongside Sarutobi Asuma, Hitaki Kakashi, and Yuhi Kurenai. However, since he began focusing on learning the Konoha style, Willow technique, he had temporarily separated from them. Later, he had even roped Kurenai into learning water-style ninjutsu with him, splitting them into 2 training groups. Today was no different, but Hanekawa had heard an interesting piece of news from Sarutobi Asuma. Apparently, Uchiha Shursui had joined their training group and sparred with Kakashi every day. This unexpected development was a ripple effect of Hankawa's actions, a butterfly effect that didn't exist in the original story. As Hankawa and Kurenai walked down the street, a voice suddenly called out to them. "You two kids." They turned to see a man dressed in a white chef's uniform approaching them. "I'm Tucci, the chef of Ichiraka Ramen," the man said, handing them 2 coupons. "Our restaurant officially opens next month, and we're offering discounts. Please stop by." "Thank you," Hankawa said, accepting the coupons. "We'll definitely come." As a fan of the original series, Hankawa couldn't miss the grand opening of Ichiraka Ramen. He also wanted to taste the ramen that Naruto Uzumaki loved so much. A new week began. Hankawa woke up early, determined to practice water-style techniques on his own. Dressed in his usual workout clothes, he jogged down the empty streets. "Hankawa." Suddenly, Tsuchibashi appeared and grabbed his arm. "Finally, I found you," he said, visibly excited. "What's up, Uncle Tsuchibashi?" Hankawa asked, raising an eyebrow. "Did Kumogakure send new orders?" "It's about the new book," Tsuchibashi said, clutching his chest dramatically. "You've gone so long without releasing one. Do you know how much money we've lost?" Hankawa nearly wanted to retort, "Do you even remember that you're supposed to be a spy?" "Oh wait, I'm the same, so never mind." Hankawa, an orphan, had no emotional ties to Kumogakure. His life and friends were all in Konoha. As for his status as a spy, it was useful for now, so he kept it. But if it ever became a liability, he wouldn't hesitate to abandon it. With his current position and reputation in Konoha, even if Kumogakure accused him of being a spy, Konoha would likely dismiss it as baseless slander. Of course, if Kumogakure offered him the position of Reikage, he wouldn't turn it down. "Does your friend have a new book?" Tsuchibashi asked eagerly. "I'll check with him when I get back," Hankawa replied after some thought. "When will you let me know?" Tsuchibashi complained. "You haven't been to the bookstore in months. Don't make me wait that long again." "Tomorrow," Hankawa said, suppressing a smirk. "Why do you look like a heartbroken housewife?" "All right, I'll wait," Tsuchibashi said, relieved. As Hankawa jogged away, he pondered ideas for a new book. Soon, inspiration struck. He decided to release a treasured epic from his previous life, Black Beast, Kuroinu, 18+ visual novel in Steam. In his past life, he had even bought a figurine of Celestine. At the third training ground, Hankawa arrived early, and since it was a Sunday, the place was completely empty. Standing in the middle of the field, he exhaled deeply and formed hand seals. Water style, wild water wave. Chakra gathered in his throat, but nothing came out. Instead, he ended up coughing violently, choking on the water. The attempt had failed. Undeterred, Hankawa rested briefly before trying again. Irank ninjutsu, water style, wild water wave. Trigger condition, successfully perform the technique. Effect, automatically master the technique at a proficient level. After an hour of practice, Hankawa unlocked a new entry. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, he decided to call it a day. He knew that to synthesize wood-style techniques, he would need to master water-style ninjutsu to a high level, possibly that of a jonin. It wasn't something that could be rushed. For now, his priority was perfecting Konoha style, Willow. April arrived quickly. Ichiraku ramen. Wow! Look at all the people. Kurenai exclaimed, marveling at the long line outside the shop. Hankawa frowned slightly. That's quite a crowd. Scanning the line, he counted over 30 people waiting. Hankawa. A familiar voice called out, and he turned to see Kushina Uzumaki waving excitedly. Kushina-ne. Hankawa greeted her with a smile. Minato-senpai. Wait a second, Minato Namikaze said, puzzled. Why do you call her Ne-chan and me senpai? Because Hankawa likes me more, Kushina said with a smug look, glaring at Minato. Minato could only sigh in defeat. Hankawa, of course, simply didn't want to call Minato big brother. That term stirred up some unfortunate imagery for him. Hankawa. At that moment, Sarutobi Asuma's voice rang out. He was accompanied by Kakashi, Rin, and Obito. Hankawa. Kakashi. Might Guy appeared as well, running upside down on his hands as he called out to them. Hankawa sure is popular, Minato said, sounding both amused and impressed. 78. Uchiha Shisui awakens his Sharingan. Why isn't Shisui here? Hankawa glanced around. Most of his friends had shown up, but Uchiha Shisui was noticeably absent. Given Shisui's personality, it was unusual for him to skip training. Shisui hasn't trained with us for the past 2 days, Sarutobi Asuma said, sounding a bit worried. Maybe something happened. Obito, do you know anything? Hatake Kakashi asked. Since Hankawa had started learning Konoha style, Willow from Mariboshi Kosuka, it had been Uchiha Shisui sparring with him in swordsmanship. However, when it came to Kenjutsu, Kakashi was still a cut above. That said, Shisui wasn't far behind and was leagues ahead of most people his age. He's been staying at home recently, Uchiha Obito replied after thinking for a moment. It's our turn. Yuhi Kurenai waved her hand, breaking Hankawa out of his thoughts. Hankawa, what do you want to eat? Hankawa looked at the menu on the wall. Remembering Naruto Uzumaki's favorite ramen from the original series, he said, chashu rib ramen. I'll have the same, Kurenai quickly added. Rin, what about you? Obito enthusiastically suggested, I think the tonkatsu ramen is pretty good. Then I'll have the tonkatsu ramen, Noera Rin said, unable to decide on her own. Uncle, 2 bowls of tonkatsu ramen. Obito called out excitedly. Ignoring the commotion, Kakashi ordered a simple vegetable ramen, as was his habit. Good choice, Kushina Uzumaki said approvingly. Kids should eat more vegetables. Should we order the vegetable ramen too? Minato Namikaze joked. We're not kids. Let's go with large bowls of chashu rib ramen. Kushina declared boldly. Kushina-ne is so cool. Kurenai said, her eyes lighting up. Don't follow her example, Hankawa whispered. He couldn't imagine Kurenai growing up to be a violent tomboy. Okay, Kurenai nodded obediently, then asked, how did you meet her? Our teachers introduced us, Hankawa said casually, grabbing 2 pairs of chopsticks. Kurenai blinked in realization. Hankawa's teacher was Tsunade, while Minato's teacher was Jiraiya. Being part of the legendary Sannin, they naturally had close connections. And it was obvious that Kushina and Minato were close as well. Here, Hankawa handed her a pair of chopsticks. Thanks, Kurenai said with a smile. Hankawa glanced at Kushina. With her bond with the Ninetales improving, it had been a long time since she'd lost control. This might be why she was allowed to roam freely, much earlier than in the original story. After all, someone who could be close friends with Uchiha Mikoto couldn't have been confined to a barrier all the time. Hankawa pondered. That dutiful son, Uchiha Itachi, should be born around now, right? Here you go. Tucci placed the ramen on the table. Your chashu rib ramen. Thanks, Uncle Tucci. Hankawa picked up his chopsticks, lifted the noodles, and slurped them down in one go. Chewing thoughtfully, he silently noted that the taste was indeed excellent. This is amazing. This is the taste of youth. Not far away, Might Guy was practically in tears, savoring every bite. Hankawa averted his eyes, half expecting Guy to rip off his shirt any second. Refocusing his attention, Hankawa opened the system menu. After a month of effort, he had unlocked 2 new entries. A-rank ninjutsu entry, Konoha style, Willow, trigger condition, successfully perform this technique. Effect, automatically master the technique to a proficient level. Thanks to his swordsmanship talent and Een release affinity, Hankawa had learned it much faster than expected. Additionally, the difficulty of learning Konoha style, Willow was lower than mastering the strength of 100 seal. D-rank talent entry, Water style genin, trigger condition, acquire 3 water style ninjutsu entries. Effect, increases the power of all water style techniques by 30%. Note, learning more water style techniques can evolve this to a C-rank water style chunin entry. The second entry was similar to his earlier wind style genin entry, nothing too surprising. The 3 water style techniques Hankawa had learned were Wild Water Wave, Water Fang Bullet, and Water Body Flicker technique. Ah, I'm so full. Kurenai said happily, putting down her chopsticks. That was satisfying. If you like it, we can come here more often, Hankawa said casually, handing her a napkin. Kurenai replied as she wiped her mouth. Youth really is full of energy, Minato Namikaze teased, watching them. What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying I'm old? Kushina Uzumaki's voice came from beside him, laced with a threatening tone. That's not what I meant. Minato shivered and quickly explained. Hankawa, we'll head out first, Kushina said, her tone instantly cheerful. Bring Lady Tsunade along to visit me sometime. Sure, Hankawa replied. It had been a while since he and Tsunade visited Kushina's house, though such visits usually turned into gambling sessions. Even the Ninetales fox had a gambling addiction comparable to Tsunade's, though its luck wasn't much better, making it the perfect example of someone bad at gambling but still addicted. After finishing their ramen, everyone went their separate ways. Should we go to Uncle Kosuka's place? Kurenai asked, hopping along happily beside Hankawa. I'm heading to the Konoha hospital, Hankawa said after some thought. He had already mastered Konoha style, Willow, so there was no need to bother Mariboshi Kosuka anymore. However, Kurenai still had a long way to go in mastering her water style techniques. Alright, Kurenai said, a little disappointed but not throwing a tantrum. When they reached the intersection, they stopped. Wait, your hair's a bit messy, Hankawa said, stepping closer to fix the strands near her ear. At such close range, Kurenai found her heartbeat quickening. Her face flushed slightly, but she suppressed her emotions and said politely, "Thank you." "It's nothing," Hankawa replied, pulling back his hand. See you tonight. Kurenai turned around and exhaled deeply, thinking to herself how good-looking Hankoa was. At the Konoha hospital, Hankoa was greeted warmly by the nurses, as it had been some time since his last visit. After much effort to escape their enthusiasm, he made his way to Nono Yakushi's office. Hankoa. Nono looked up in surprise. Director, Hankoa said respectfully. Is there anything I can help with today? He had a lot of ninjutsu to learn, but medical ninjutsu was his top priority. As Tsunade's student, he couldn't afford to tarnish her reputation. Of course, Nono replied with a smile. I have a surgery coming up, and you can assist me. Understood, Hankoa said seriously. I'll do my best. Here's the patient's information, Nono said, handing him the file with a gentle expression. Yugao Yuzuki. Hankoa glanced at the file and froze for a moment. You know her? Nono asked curiously. No, Hankoa shook his head. I just didn't expect the patient to be so young, only 5 years old. Yugao Yuzuki, in the original story, was Gekko Hiate's girlfriend. A skilled special jonin, she excelled in Konoha-style swordsmanship. It's almost time. Let's head to the operating room, Nono said, glancing at the clock on the wall. All right. Hankoa put on the specially designed white medical uniform. She's about your age, so be sure to comfort her, Nono said as they walked. She's been crying a lot. Bone fractures do hurt, Hankoa agreed, sympathizing with the young girl. At the entrance to the operating room, a young man approached them. Lady Nono, is it time for my daughter's surgery? Yes, Nono said gently. She'll be fine soon. Thank you so much, Lady Nono. The man expressed his gratitude, but then his gaze landed on Hankoa, and he hesitated. A medical ninja this young? He asked, clearly concerned. This is Hankoa, Nono introduced. He's Lady Tsunade's student. So it's him. The man's expression shifted as he grabbed Hankoa's hand. Please take care of her. I will, Hankoa replied, understanding how highly medical ninjas were regarded. No one would casually offend them, especially given how rare they were in the ninja world. In Konoha, thanks to Tsunade, there were relatively more medical ninjas. However, other villages weren't as fortunate. For instance, when Kankuro was poisoned by Sasori, the entire Sunagakure was helpless until Sakura Haruno stepped in. Similarly, when the fourth Reikage was injured by the explosive bugs of Deidara, only Tsunade's timely intervention saved his life. As Hankoa entered the operating room, he was met with the sound of quiet sobbing. Looking toward the bed, he saw a young girl with purple hair, her face streaked with tears. Hello. I'm Hankoa, he said, walking over and gently patting her head. Yuzuki Yugao lifted her head, staring at Hankoa in confusion. It'll stop hurting soon, Hankoa reassured her. He glanced at Nono Yakushi, who gave a nod of approval. Forming a hand seal, pale green chakra flowed from his hands and enveloped Yuzuki Yugao's leg. The numbing effect severed her sense of pain, causing her eyes to widen in surprise. It really doesn't hurt anymore, she exclaimed, a smile breaking through her tears. Thank you, big brother. Just call me Hankoa, he said quickly. No need to call me big brother. Yuzuki Yugao tilted her head, puzzled. He looked nice, but she thought he was a bit strange. Close your eyes, Hankawa instructed as Nono began the surgery. Okay. Yuzuki Yugao obediently shut her eyes. Hankawa patted her head again before standing up to assist with the operation. An hour later, the surgery was complete. Hankawa let out a breath of relief, looking over at Yuzuki Yugao, who had fallen asleep. Let her rest, Nono said as she left the operating room. Hankawa followed her out. The surgery went well, Nono said with a smile. Take her to the recovery ward. Thank you, Lady Nono, the young man outside the room said gratefully. After a pause, he added, and to you too, Hankawa. Please drop the little part when addressing me, Hankawa thought but maintained a professional demeanor. Just doing my job, he replied politely. The rest of the day at Konoha Hospital passed quickly. Hankawa gained considerable experience, though mastery was still a long way off. Knowing he was making progress reassured him, it was only a matter of time. As Hankawa prepared to leave for the day, the young man approached him again. Hankawa, the man said. Do you have a moment? My daughter woke up and wanted to thank you in person. Hankawa hesitated but eventually agreed. Big brother. Yuzuki Yugao shouted happily as soon as she saw him. Hankawa wanted to correct her, but he chose not to in the end. Walking over, he lightly patted her head. How are you feeling? He asked, withdrawing his hand. A bit uncomfortable, but it doesn't hurt anymore, Yuzuki Yugao said. After a pause, she added, Big brother really is midline horizontal ellipsis, a miracle worker, her father finished, seeing her hesitate. That's right. Yuzuki Yugao agreed enthusiastically. I still have a long way to go, Hankawa said with a small smile. Rest well, and you'll recover fully in a few days. After chatting briefly, Hankawa left the room. Standing at the hospital entrance, Hankawa initially planned to head straight home, but then he thought of Shisui Uchiha. After a moment's consideration, he began walking toward the Uchiha clan's residence. In the original story, the Uchiha clan had been moved to the outskirts of Konoha. However, they were still located closer to the center at this point in time. Most ninjas avoided visiting the Uchiha district due to the clan's arrogance, but Hankawa was an exception. He had treated many Uchiha ninjas at the hospital, and as Tsunade's student, he had earned their respect. After getting directions, Hankawa made his way to Shirsue's home. Before he reached the door, the sound of slicing wind reached his ears, familiar to him as the sound of a blade cutting through the air. Looking up, he saw Shisui Uchiha practicing sword techniques in front of his house. Shisui. Hankawa called out from a distance. Hankawa-senpai. Shisui turned to him, his expression slightly surprised. Hankawa froze for a moment, his gaze locked on Shirsue's eyes. They were blood red, with a single black tomo spinning within each. The Sharingan. Sorry, Shisui said, realizing his oversight, and deactivated his Sharingan. When did you awaken it? Hankawa asked as he walked closer, curious. 2 days ago, Shisui replied in a low voice. His expression was more somber than usual, and Hankawa quickly understood why. For the Uchiha, awakening the Sharingan required intense emotional stimulation. Whatever had happened must have been deeply upsetting. Did you need something? Shisui asked calmly. You haven't been training with the others lately, so I wanted to check on you, Hankawa explained. I'll join them in a couple of days, Shisui said after a moment of thought. Having just awakened his Sharingan, he needed time to adjust to his newfound strength. All right. Hankoa nodded before asking, want to spar? Now? Shisui looked surprised. I've always been curious about the Uchiha's Sharingan, Hankoa said with a light laugh. Obito keeps saying that once he awakens his Sharingan, he'll defeat me and Kakashi. Obito tends to exaggerate, Shisui replied, scratching his head. The Sharingan does make you stronger, but it's not invincible. Then, shall we? Hankoa asked again. Sure. Shisui's eyes lit up with excitement. As a genius, he had his own pride. After losing to Hankoa last time, he had been eager for a rematch. 79. Combined Jutsu. Be careful, Hankoa-senpai. After forming the seal of confrontation, Shisui Uchiha immediately created some distance between them. At incredible speed, he expelled a blazing fireball from his mouth, the Uchiha clan's signature technique, fire release, great fireball technique. The air rippled with intense heat, and Hankoa felt the scorching wave rushing toward him. A direct hit wouldn't be something to take lightly. Body flicker technique. Hankoa accelerated in an instant, drawing his katana in the same motion. You're still so fast. But this time, I can see you. With a thought, Shisui activated his Sharingan. To him, Hankoa's previously blinding speed now appeared significantly slower. This was the true power of the Sharingan. Even with a single tomo, it granted Shisui exceptional insight. With a 3-tomo Sharingan, users could go even further, replicating an opponent's ninjutsu while performing it simultaneously, achieving perfect synchronization. In the original series, Kakashi Hatake, equipped with a 3-tomo Sharingan, became the copy ninja, mastering over 1,000 jutsu. Clang! Shisui blocked Hankoa's katana with his ninja blade. Last time, Shisui had lost due to Hankoa's body flicker technique. But now, its effectiveness was significantly reduced. As expected of the Sharingan, Hankoa praised while exerting force with both hands. Shisui felt a tremendous strength reverberate through his arms, making his hands slightly numb. Without hesitation, he stomped the ground and retreated. Fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. Opening his mouth, Shisui released a barrage of small fireballs. Hankoa neither dodged nor flinched. Swinging his katana, he created afterimages that precisely sliced through the fireballs. When Hankoa glanced around, Shisui had disappeared. Whoosh! Hearing the sound of rushing wind, Hankoa turned to see a pair of crimson Sharingan eyes. Inevitably, he froze. It was Genjutsu. Ordinary Genjutsu users needed to form hand seals to cast illusions. But the Uchiha clan's Sharingan allowed them to cast Genjutsu without seals, making it nearly impossible to guard against. Genjutsu release. Hankoa, prepared for this, quickly broke free, nearly instantaneously. Even so, it gave Shisui an excellent opening. Wielding his blade with both hands, Shisui's ninja blade gleamed as it swung down. Fox Heart technique. In a flash, Hankoa formed a series of seals. Shisui, fixated on him, was caught in the illusion. He felt as if he'd entered a maze. How is his hand sealing speed this fast? This could be bad. Realizing the danger, Shisui broke free of the illusion in a panic. His vision returned to normal, but by then, Hankoa's katana was already inches away. Turnabout is fair play. Hankawa had perfectly replicated Shirsue's earlier tactics. Unable to evade in time, Shirsue instinctively raised his ninja blade to block. Clang! The clash of blades echoed as Shirsue's body trembled before being sent flying. Hankawa remained where he stood, choosing not to pursue. Hankawa-senpai's genjutsu is as remarkable as his swordsmanship, Shirsue said as he struggled to his feet, visibly impressed. Even with the Sharingan, he had fallen for the illusion, proof that this was no ordinary genjutsu. Not to mention Hankawa's astonishing hand-sealing speed. Shirsue prided himself on his speed, but Hankawa was even faster. If you had a 3-tomo Sharingan, my genjutsu might not work, Hankawa said with a small smile. Want to go another round? I've developed a new technique, inspired by your body flicker technique, combined with my Sharingan, Shirsue said, forming seals. Please have a look. Phantom body flicker technique. 2 identical clones appeared on either side of Shirsue. With the original, all 3 charged at Hankawa with blades drawn. Only 2 clones. Hankawa noted. In the original series, Shirsue could create 7 or 8 clones, if not more. This must be because the technique was newly developed and limited by the single Tomo Sharingan. Konoha style, willow stance. Hankawa raised his katana, his movements creating afterimages. Shirsue's heart sank as Hankawa's form seemed to flicker unpredictably. The air filled with countless phantom katanas, overwhelming his senses. Biting his lip, Shirsue sent his 2 clones forward. Clang! Clang! The sounds of repeated clashes filled the air. The clones took multiple hits but didn't disappear. Illusions? Shirsue froze in realization. At that moment, a cold gleam flashed before his eyes. He instinctively tried to dodge but found his body frozen in place. A katana hovered inches from his face, with Hankawa standing behind it. I lost again, Shirsue said with a sigh, staring at the katana pointed at him. Is this some kind of clone technique? Hankawa asked curiously. It's a combination of the body flicker technique and clone techniques, Shirsue explained. I plan to integrate shadow clone jutsu later to add layers of deception and make it harder to distinguish between real and fake. Impressive. Hankawa finally understood the source of Shirsue's Shunshin stopwater technique. But it wasn't something just anyone could learn because its foundation wasn't in the body flicker technique but the Sharingan. Unfortunately, no new entries were added. He had thought fighting an Uchiha with awakened eyes might bring some surprises. Hankawa-senpai is still more impressive. Shirsue said sincerely, combining swordsmanship with genjutsu is truly terrifying. At first, he had mistaken the Konoha style, willow for afterimages created by rapid movements, only to realize later it was genjutsu. By the time he noticed, it was too late to break free. For someone from the Uchiha clan to fall victim like this, it was no surprise how much worse it could be for other ninjas. Konoha style, willow, Hankawa explained, was created by a genin named Kosuke Mariboshi. A genin? Shirsue was stunned. A genin came up with this sword technique? He wasn't an ordinary genin, Hankawa said with a smile, seeing Shirsue's reaction. Then he gave him a brief explanation. I see. Shirsue's eyes sparkled as he said, I get it now. This is what a true Konoha ninja is. Wait, what do you mean you get it? Hankoa felt like there was something deeper in Shirsue's words. Considering how he acted in the original series, was he already thinking about how to maintain the relationship between the Uchiha clan and Konoha? Why were Uchiha prodigies so precocious? Shisui was, and so was Itachi. But Shisui was more principled than Itachi. At least he didn't massacre his entire clan. Thank you, Hankoa-senpai. Shisui exhaled deeply, the gloom from earlier gone. It's nothing, Hankoa replied, shaking his head. Just make sure to get back to training soon. I'm sure you'll give Kakashi a surprise. I'll return tomorrow, Shisui said with a grin. Kakashi-senpai won't have such an easy time defeating me now. Alright, see you tomorrow, Hankoa said as he sheathed his katana. Why don't you stay and have dinner with us? At that moment, a voice came from not far away. Clan leader. Shisui instinctively called out. Hankoa's mind raced. Was this Fugaku Uchiha? He studied the young man before him, dressed in black tactical gear with a green Jonin vest, short black hair, and a calm expression. Definitely the no-nonsense type. Shisui, you've awakened your Sharingan. Why didn't you tell me? Fugaku walked over, a rare smile on his face. For someone Shisui's age to awaken his Sharingan was nothing short of extraordinary. It wouldn't be long before the Uchiha clan had a true powerhouse. In the current tense atmosphere, this would help relieve some of the pressure from Danzo and Root. Sorry, Shisui said apologetically. I forgot to mention it. What's there to apologize for? Fugaku patted his shoulder and said, if there's anything you don't understand about your newly awakened eyes, feel free to ask me. Yes, clan leader, Shisui replied quickly. And you must be Hankoa. Fugaku turned to Hankoa and asked. I am, Hankoa confirmed with a nod. Lady Tsunade has a talented student, Fugaku remarked with some admiration. He had heard of Hankoa before, but he hadn't expected him to excel in both swordsmanship and genjutsu. Uncle Fugaku, you flatter me, Hankoa said modestly. Since you're here, why not join us for dinner? Fugaku smiled. I've got a bit of a connection with your teacher. What connection? Are you trying to build ties? Hankoa couldn't help but complain inwardly. Fugaku Uchiha, as the clan leader, always came across as indecisive in the original story. Neither suppressing the hardliners within the clan nor successfully mending ties with Konoha's higher UPS, he ended up failing on both fronts. After hesitating for a few seconds, Hankoa decided not to refuse. After all, it was an invitation from the leader of Konoha's largest clan. Shisui, you join us too, Fugaku said as he led them back to his house. The door was opened by a young woman with long black hair, Mikoto Uchiha. Aside from her, there was no one else. Itachi and Sasuke hadn't been born yet. After dinner, Hankoa used meeting with Tsunade as an excuse to leave early. His potential is limitless, Fugaku said in a deep voice as he watched Hankoa's figure disappear. Well, he is Lady Tsunade's student, Mikoto agreed. Even if he weren't her student, he wouldn't be any less exceptional, Fugaku said, shaking his head. Mikoto was taken aback. It was the first time she had heard Fugaku praise a child so highly. Of course, Shisui will surpass him. Fugaku's face was filled with pride. After all, he has the Sharingan. By the time Hankoa returned to Tsunade's house, night had fallen. He had been delayed for about an hour because of dinner. Sensei, Hankawa called as he pushed the door open and entered the living room. Brat, you're finally back, Tsunade groaned from the sofa, sounding weak. I'm starving. You haven't eaten? Hankawa asked, stunned. Sensei, aren't you too lazy? Why didn't you cook something yourself? What did you say? Tsunade sat up, clenching her fist. Come here. No way, Hankawa said, backing up 2 steps. I'll go make dinner. Stop right there. Tsunade barked. But Hankawa didn't stop. He ran even faster, dashing straight into the kitchen. TCH, Tsunade muttered before letting out a small laugh. That brat is really fearless. 80. Catch spies eating alone doesn't need to be complicated. Hankawa improvised and made a bowl of ramen. He stepped out of the kitchen, used his meal magic, and called out, Sensei, food's ready. Tsunade got up from the couch and walked to the dining table. Seeing only one bowl of ramen, she was slightly taken aback. Who did you eat with? Tsunade casually asked, picking up her chopsticks. Uchiha Fugaku. Hankawa briefly explained what had happened. Shisui opened his Sharingan at such a young age? Tsunade was surprised. If anyone understood the Uchiha clan the best, it wouldn't be Uchiha Madara or Uchiha Fugaku, but rather Senju Tobirama. His research on the Sharingan was incredibly profound. Given Tsunade's status and background, she had naturally read about it. She remembered that the Uchiha clan's strongest member, Uchiha Madara, had awakened his Sharingan at around 12 years old. Could it be that Uchiha Shisui's talent was even greater? Yeah, Hankawa nodded slightly and said, the Sharingan really lives up to its reputation. The Uchiha clan's Jonin are said to be unmatched in one-on-one combat on the battlefield, Tsunade said, slurping some noodles. Once Shisui unlocks the 3 Tomo, you'll have a hard time defeating him. Not necessarily. Hankawa smiled. I still have faith in my teacher. What does that have to do with me? Tsunade was momentarily stunned and asked, puzzled. A great teacher produces excellent students, Hankawa coughed lightly and explained. If the teacher is strong, so are the students. You sure know how to talk. Tsunade rolled her eyes and, with a stern face, asked, You've been learning swordsmanship lately, did you forget about monster strength? Of course not. Hankawa glanced at his progress bar and said, I think I'll master it by this year. This year? Tsunade raised an eyebrow. You're pretty confident. If Hankawa could master it this year, it wouldn't be too slow, it would be shockingly fast. In the original timeline, Haruno Sakura took nearly 3 years to learn medical ninjutsu and monster strength, while Shizun never managed to master it. Their talent in medical ninjutsu was already incredible, which highlighted the difficulty of learning monster strength. I can't let my sensei lose face, Hankawa said seriously. If you can master it, you won't just save me face, you'll make me proud. Tsunade smiled. Then look forward to it, sensei, Hankawa replied with a grin. With a cheat system and hard work, not mastering monster strength would be the real issue. Oh right, I took a mission today, Tsunade suddenly remembered. What mission? Hankawa's eyes lit up. The last mission he went on was a month ago. Training every day was boring, it was about time to get out and stretch his legs. Besides, he might run into another genius like Mei Terumi to help him brush his talent points. Catching spies, Tsunade said casually. Hankawa's heart skipped a beat. Could it be spies from the hidden cloud village? A spy against a spy, what a struggle. But this was necessary sacrifice. They're spies from the hidden stone village, Tsunade continued, sipping the ramen broth. They'll be meeting tomorrow morning near Tenzaku town. What's the mission rank? Hankawa thought about the hidden stone village's geniuses. At this time, had Deidara, the one who loved shouting "Art is an explosion," been born yet? Even if he was, there was no way he'd be sent as a spy. As for Kuratsuchi, the future Tsuchikage, she was the same age as Niji Hyuga, so she definitely wasn't born yet. B rank. Tsunade paused and added, "Don't worry, you won't run into a jonin like last time." Okay. Hankawa nodded and asked, "What time are we leaving tomorrow?" Tenzaku town is about 2 hours from Konoha, Tsunade thought for a moment and said, "Be here by 6 in the morning. Don't forget to come early and make breakfast." "I'm your student, not your servant," Hankawa grumbled. "You're my student, did I charge you tuition?" Tsunade shot him a glare. "Having you make breakfast is a huge bargain for you." Yeah, right midline horizontal ellipsis, Hankawa replied half-heartedly. "Brat." Tsunade put down her chopsticks, stood up, and leaned forward slightly. "Are you looking for a beating?" Her face was serious, exuding the authority of a teacher. Hankawa's body stiffened. "What's clouding my vision?" He tried hard to lift his head and said sincerely, "You're absolutely right, sensei. I'll go wash the dishes now." Tsunade pursed her lips. This kid was too slippery, it left her feeling stuck and uncomfortable. After washing the dishes, Hankawa went outside. He spent 2 hours turning the ground into a mess before ending his monster strength training. The next day, Hankawa arrived at Tsunade's house early. He woke her up and then began making breakfast. When Tsunade finished washing up, she paused as she passed by the kitchen. She glanced inside and saw Hankawa's busy figure. A hint of wistfulness flashed across Tsunade's face. She wasn't sure when it had started, but she had grown used to Hankawa's presence. If one day he weren't there, it would feel unnatural. "Sensei, stop staring and grab the bowls and chopsticks," Hankawa said, glancing at her and bluntly giving instructions. Midline horizontal ellipsis, Tsunade quickly shook off her thoughts. She walked over, gave his head a good rub, and then grabbed the bowls and chopsticks. Hankawa was already used to this and silently jotted it down in his little notebook. He would definitely pay her back one day. After breakfast, the two of them left the house. "I specifically arranged for 2 umbu to accompany us. They'll take the spies back to Konoha," Tsunade said, rubbing her hands together excitedly. "As for us, we'll hit the casino for a couple of rounds." Hankawa finally understood why she accepted this mission, it was clear she had ulterior motives. Tenzaku Street, mentioned in the original story, was a bustling area infamous for its gambling dens. Tsunade often frequented the casinos there. With Hankawa now around and her fear of blood no longer an issue, she visited less often. 2 hours later, they arrived at Tenzaku Street. It was only 8 a.m., but the street was already packed with people. Hankawa glanced around and saw many scantily clad women standing at the entrances of izakayas, trying to attract customers. Tsunade's gaze had already wandered to the nearby casino. Clearing her throat, she said, "Just like last time, you'll handle the mission alone. Hankoa nodded slightly. He already knew this last night, so it didn't surprise him. When he looked up again, Tsunade had already disappeared without a trace. Hankoa scanned his surroundings and quickly identified his target, a lodge called Amaterasu Inn. According to the mission briefing, he needed to capture the hidden stone spies and their contact. Most likely, there were 2 Chunin involved. Transformation Jutsu. In a puff of smoke, Hankoa's body rapidly grew, transforming into an unremarkable 30-year-old man. He entered the inn and checked into a room. After the staff left, Hankoa slipped out through the window and quickly located the room where the hidden stone spy was. Just one person. Through the window, Hankoa saw a middle-aged man inside the room. After a brief moment of thought, Hankoa simply knocked on the door. "Who's there?" the man asked cautiously. "Room service," Hankoa said, making it up on the spot. "Not needed," the man replied coldly. Demonic illusion, hell viewing technique. Hankoa formed hand seals, and the moment he finished, he kicked open the door and locked eyes with the man. The man opened his mouth to speak but froze as the scenery around him suddenly shifted. He found himself in the Hokage's office, with the 3rd Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, glaring at him furiously. "Your cover has been blown." "No. Don't kill me." The man's face twisted in sheer terror. The hell viewing technique reflects the victim's greatest fears. For a spy, being exposed was his ultimate nightmare. Hankoa walked forward and delivered a punch, physically knocking him out of the genjutsu. The middle-aged man immediately fell into a sleep as peaceful as a baby's. Hankoa propped him onto the desk, then flashed onto the ceiling beam to avoid being seen through the window or door cracks. Time slowly passed. A few minutes later, there was a rhythmic knock at the door, 3 long, 2 short, repeated in sequence. Hankoa recalled what he had learned in class about ninja ciphers. This was undoubtedly the hidden stone's special contact signal. He jumped down and opened the door. The young ninja's pupils contracted the moment he saw Hankoa, but before he could react, he too fell into a daze. Using the same method, Hankoa knocked him out. "Genjutsu really is convenient," he muttered. A shadow flashed by. It was Tsunade, who had been hiding in the dark. She had witnessed the whole process. To be honest, she was surprised at how clever Hankoa was. He hadn't resorted to brute force. Earlier, she thought he might be too arrogant to use such underhanded tactics and was prepared to lecture him about it. But it turned out to be unnecessary. A bit of a shame, she thought. This kid was so talented that it left her with no opportunities to teach him anything. "Say." Tsunade clapped her hands. "Yes, Lady Tsunade." 2 masked umbu appeared, one after the other. "Take these 2 back to the old man," Tsunade instructed casually, handing over a mission scroll. "And while you're at it, report the mission for me." "Understood." The umbu member named Sei took the scroll, and with his partner, carried the 2 unconscious spies out of the room. "Let's go." Tsunade suddenly perked up with excitement. "To the casino." "Midline horizontal ellipsis alright." Hankoa sighed. Tsunade, knowing the way like the back of her hand, walked confidently into a casino. "Lady Tsunade. It's been a long time since you last visited." The casino manager's eyes gleamed, practically shouting "big spender" without saying it aloud. Tsunade sat confidently at a gambling table. I'm winning back everything I lost last time. The last time she came to Tanzaku Street, Hankawa hadn't been around. But this time was different. Tsunade scooped Hankawa up without hesitation and placed him on her lap. A familiar scent washed over him. Hankawa sniffed and resigned himself to his fate, burying his head in her embrace. What's going on here? The casino manager was puzzled. He hadn't heard that Tsunade had gotten married. But a kid wasn't going to make a difference. Midline horizontal ellipsis. However, it wasn't long before he realized things weren't going well. Ha 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 ha. Tsunade laughed gleefully. Hankawa frowned. He had been dozing off peacefully, only to be smacked awake by her weapons. Absolutely unforgivable.